Chapter 151, Castro Brusso's Secret. After entering the Emerald Dream, Ryan discovered that the headmaster of Castro Bruscio and several students were still standing there talking to the totem pole this time. But he did not evade, but walked over generously. When he first walked under the totem pole, he saw the headmaster of Castro Bruscio looked at him gently and said, "I am very happy to see a fellow from afar. You can join us here. First discuss the problem, and then after the discussion, you can go upstairs to see some of our information." After listening to the principal's words, Ryan immediately realized that in fact he had been discovered when he first entered the Emerald Dream, and Castro Bruscio welcomed those foreign guests into the Emerald Dream. This reminded Ryan of the teaching of Aunt Betty the Horseman. In her class, she told Ryan that this world can enter the Emerald Dream independently, except for those evil people who twisted around to form the Emerald Nightmare after entering. The rest of the people will be treated in the same way as friendly. It's just that Ryan was out of defense and had a suspicious attitude towards the words Aunt Betty said. But now it seems that she is right. While thinking about these things, Ryan listened to everyone's discussion. There are not many people here. There are only 6 students besides the principal himself. But these 6 students are different from the principal. Everyone's face is covered with a mask made of bark. What they are discussing now is about how to deal with an emerald nightmare that suddenly appeared in the rainforest. It seems that this problem has been happening for several days. They are discussing today for the final decision. Obviously, everyone is equal on such occasions, because Ryan found that the students were seriously discussing issues with the principal, and sometimes even refuted the principal's words, but the principal did not care about these rebuttals. After persuading all the students, the headmaster of Castro Bruscio turned to Ryan to ask his opinion on this kind of thing. Ryan thought about it for a while, and then briefly talked about how he cleared the jadeite nightmare formed by the 8-eyed giant spider in the Forbidden Forest. The headmaster just wanted to say something after listening to Ryan's account. A figure in a green robe walked in from the door, because although he had a mask, he put it on his head. So Ryan recognized him as a professor of Castro Blueberry's herbal class. "Mr. Principal, I have returned from the investigation. The reason for the Emerald Nightmare was a crack in the seal of the temple of the evil god, and the demonized Sakiseiki was capped inside." "Sakiseiki? What's that?" Lane asked a student next to him curiously. "It's a giant bird that looks like an Andean condor, and can drive the clouds together to create a thunderstorm. It's similar to the North American thunderbird." A girl wearing a red mask next explained enthusiastically. "Now everyone and I will deal with a magical creature that has been contaminated by evil. This guest will stay here first, and we will come back soon." After listening to the professor's report, the principal stood up and said out of his resolution, "By the way, if you stay here, you can go to the house to read, as long as you can open the door," the principal said to Ryan after arranging all the staff. Watching 8 people leave the courtyard, Ryan turned upstairs to see what the book they had just said was. There are not many rooms because it is only a small school. Except for a meditation or laboratory room, there is only a small house as a study. In the study room are some stone shelves on which are placed one after another books made of leaves, but none of the books are protected by an emerald green transparent magic shield. After trying for a lap, Ryan discovered that he now has only one book to read. This book is placed at the entrance of the room and is the largest book in the whole house. Almost half of the book height is placed on a stone stand alone. The name on the book is Castro Bruscio, the other half of the school history. Why is this kind of school history collected in this kind of place? Is it any precious? Ryan opened the book curiously, and found that it was talking about some parts of the official school history that were not mentioned. For example, the masks on the faces of students and professors that I just saw here had arrived from Castro Bruscio's third principal is a wizard who can communicate with the Emerald Dream, and he hopes to pass on this power as part of the school. So he obtained 7 masks from the jungle dwarf at the cost of completing several difficult tasks. As long as you wear a mask, you can help the user enter the Emerald Dream. With more opportunities, users will have a greater probability than others to master the power of nature and enter the Emerald Dream. For example, the herbal medicine professor put the mask on his head, which means that he has mastered some of the natural power. It only takes the power of the mask as an introduction to enter the Emerald Dream semi-autonomously. No wonder this school is famous for its magical animals and herbal medicine. If people who can enter the Emerald Dream can be mass-produced, they will naturally have special skills in this respect. In addition, the book records how a large number of schools have helped these people with the next step to solve difficulties and become brilliant. After turning the whole book, Ryan began to think about some questions, and finally said to himself, in the Emerald Dream, the strange compatriots who master the power of nature are not hostile, but they should be neutral when they get along. Is it friendly? I'm not gold. How could everyone like it? Because little Betty please take care of you. A male voice came from behind. www.mplnovel.com. I'm sorry Mr. Principal. Ryan looked embarrassed. After all, it is an embarrassing thing to tell people gossip behind the scene and be found on the spot. It's okay. Normal people will definitely doubt this situation. You are Betty's apprentice, so you can call me Mr. Fernando in private. By the way, I think you have some doubts. I think you can directly ask. Come out. The headmaster touched his white beard and smiled kindly. Okay, Mr. Fernando, I want to know why I was allowed to enter the Emerald Dream here. Because as far as I know, some schools want to hide everything about themselves, and not even the specific location of the school from others. Why Castro Blue will be so open to his secrets? Because Castro Brushuo's secret is the Emerald Dream, boy. Principal Fernando said. You know, the Emerald Dream itself is an open space. In the Emerald Dream, intelligent creatures that can move independently, except for the evil natural predators, gain power from this feedback by maintaining natural balance. So just make sure you are not a natural predator, then a natural ally. You also saw just now that this is the largest rainforest in the world, so there are many problems in the local Emerald Dream. So the Emerald in this place Dreamland we have enough resources for all people to use. The only problem is that there are too few people. Most of the time is too busy. So we sincerely welcome everyone who likes us to come here. Not to mention you are Betty It's recommended. It's half of us, and we are naturally welcome. That's it. Lane nodded. This answer finally lifted the biggest doubt in his heart, and he finally relaxed his tight nerves. Chapter 152, Guardian Charm. Ryan, who was relaxed, suddenly thought of something and asked Fernand, I want to know what Aunt Betty experienced in the past. Because she never told me. I can tell you this. Principal Fernand said. Years in your UK there was a murderous demon who preached pure blood supremacy, which caused the situation of non-human intelligent creatures in that era to be very bad. In this case, the horse people let their colts with the talent of communicating Emerald Dream in their tribe leave asylum in Britain. Your Aunt Betty is the one who came to me. Speaking of which, Headmaster Fernand recalled a warm look in his eyes and recalled, at that time Betty was about the size of you, as lively and cheerful as a real pony. She stayed here for 10 years until the villain returned to his homeland after he died. It turns out this way. No wonder Aunt Betty looks a bit different from the rest of the Maran tribe. Yeah, but I also feel sorry for her. Because in the last year here, she accidentally stabbed an evil wizard's conspiracy to the school during a jungle trip. Later, although the teachers and students in the school promptly hit that the evil wizard organization, but Betty was still under a vicious curse by the leader of the organization, losing fertility. To know that fertility is very important to their horsemen. After talking about the Principal Fernand sighed sadly. No wonder Aunt Betty looked so complicated when she looked at the grown-up ponyman at the tribe's adult ceremony. It turned out that she had such a sad past. That Mr. Fernand, how can this curse be lifted? Either you understand nature to a certain extent, you can use natural power to expel the curse, or just kill the person who released the curse. The curse will be automatically lifted. I only know these two methods. But unfortunately these two things I can't do it. Ryan took this matter to heart and decided to pay attention to it in other worlds in the future, maybe other solutions. After that, the two were silent for a while. Principal Fernand broke the silence with a cough and said, since you are an apprentice of Betty, a lot of knowledge can be open to you. But I also hope you can help me think. No problem, as long as I can do it. Please tell me. You know that there are 6 students in the school who can enter the Emerald Dream, but they are through those masks instead of relying on their own power. This makes me a little worried. So I hope you can tell them how you're entering the Emerald Dream through your own strength. Aunt Betty said that I was recognized by nature, so after being taken a few times by her, I learned to enter the Emerald Dream on my own. But I don't know how to explain it to others. Ryan said confused. Natural recognition? I always thought it was just a legend. After all, it was only a very significant contribution to the balance of nature. Principal Fernand looked at Ryan in surprise, then said, since this is the case, then you can choose what you want to communicate with them. I think they haven't been able to improve their strength probably because they are a bit proud. If you are a peer of the same age, they might be able to let them know themselves again. What can Ryan say about the principal's painstaking care for his students? What's more, as one of the wizards who practice natural magic, pay attention to the principle of equivalent exchange. If you don't pay anything and rely on your relationship with Aunt Betty to get a lot of knowledge, Ryan will also feel sad. So in the following days, Ryan went to school every day during the day, and at night in the Emerald Dream I exchanged the experience of natural forces with several Castro Brusio seniors. Soon after a week of busyness, it was not until he had lunch on Friday that a local student he didn't know told Ryan to go to the office of the combat class professor to learn the magic of the patron saint in the afternoon, and he remembered it. After lunch, Ryan came to the door of the professor's office on the 3rd floor and saw David and another boy waiting there. It seemed that they were the top 2 in the game that day. After seeing Ryan, David greeted him happily, and the 3 of them whispered in front of the office. Ryan also learned that Peter, who won the championship last time, was actually a shy person, but he came from an aboriginal tribe in the Amazon rainforest, so he had a wild instinct in combat. When the time came to 1:30 in the afternoon, the combat class professor walked down the hallway with a book in his hand. After seeing Ryan they had waited at the door and nodded slightly, then opened the office door to signal Ryan they went in. Entering the office, Ryan found the office very simple. There is a large open space inside. There is only one table and one chair. The only thing that can fill this is the office of the combat lesson professor. only the parts of the various dark creatures on the decorative plates on the wall and various weapons. Ryan even found an assault rifle hanging above it. Seeing Ryan staring at the gun on the wall, Professor Jason, who just learned the name of the professor from David during the chat, unlike Europe and the United States, South America is more used to calling the first name than the last name, explained to Ryan, "This is rifle, a kind of hemp weapon. The accidental technique of adult wizards can easily stimulate the defensive magic to block when the bullets touch them. But this weapon is deadly for small wizards and some careless wizards." www.novel.com. After the introduction, Professor Jason turned out a blackboard and began to explain the usage of the patron saint. The magic cannot be released without knowing the spell. There is no way. Who makes those books related to advanced spells difficult to find? What? So everything can only be taught from the most basic. Magic is not something that can be released simply by knowing the spell. Even a simple entry-level magic such as the floating spell has a method of exhaling the pronunciation of the spell. The most basic requirement of a jitter amplitude of the wand when it is released, not to mention the more complex guardian-like divine mantras request for inner emotions. For example, the spell of Xiao Ming is its name. But if there is no learning, it will have no effect at all. As Fake Moody said, Avadaso's life mantra requires a very powerful magic power as a foundation. Otherwise, the nose will bleed at most. The magic power here is not only the magic level, but also the mastery of magic knowledge. Therefore, Professor Jason chose theory teaching for most of the first class. When he saw that everyone had mastered the theory, the professor asked them to take out their wands and start the experiment. This is also thanks to the patron saint curse learned by this advanced mantra, which requires positive emotions, and even mistakes will not cause too serious problems. If you want to switch to advanced attack spells that require negative emotions, such as black magic, it is estimated that this kind of theoretical extracurricular plus simulated practice requires several lessons to allow students to practice, otherwise the consequences will be unbearable if it is turned back. Therefore, it is correct to not allow those black magics to be learned in the lower grades. When the reserve of experience, knowledge and magic power is insufficient, those little wizards who learn black magic can easily be distorted under the guidance of long-term negative emotions, let alone a counterfeit. Good life is gone. Chapter 153, Castro Brushuo's Weekend. When Professor Jason allowed everyone to start the operation, Ryan immediately took out his wand and began experimenting with the method taught by the professor. Call God to guard. After chanting the spell, Ryan found nothing. This is a normal reaction. After all, the patron saint spell is also considered a high-level spell. Even if you can fully use this spell, you can get extra points in the 5th grade wizard test. Naturally, the probability of such a magic spell being able to succeed at a time is certainly very small, but the two next to it are not so good. Professor Jason tirelessly reminded him next, you need a happy memory of your heart and a determination to protect beautiful things. In short, you need enough positive emotions to release this curse. Ryan began to recall that he got the golden finger and learned that he was happy when he could go home, and the joy of saving many people before, then raised his wand. Guardian Guard. Now Ryan saw a silvery smoke from his wand head. Finally, at the end of today's lesson, Ryan found that his spell had produced a lot of silver smoke. The progress of the other two students is similar. Very good, Professor Jason said with a smile. I will bring a Dementor here next Friday afternoon, as long as you can use the Patron Saint spell to block the Dementor's attack. As for the body Patron Saint, I need to study for a long time, so I won't make a request here. Facing a real Dementor in the second practical exercise, Ryan was shocked, and this operation was simply too fierce to know that when Lupin taught Harry, he just chose to bog it as a teaching aid, and it was directly sold here. However, the other two students of the school did not show any surprise. After leaving the classroom, David explained kindly, and Ryan finally figured out the reason. Castro Brushuo specializes in the courses of magic plants and magical animals. They use a large variety of creatures in their teaching. Compared with the UK where most magical creatures are safer, the magical creatures in the Amazon area are much more dangerous. So this time it was normal for them to use Dementors as teaching aids, not to mention that there was a professor next to them. There was absolutely no problem in safety. In this comparison, there is still some lack of wizarding education in Britain in this respect. Ryan thinks this may be the reason why they came out to exchange learning this time. Know your shortcomings in comparison with other schools. Because of the study just now, everyone is very tired. So I went to dinner after saying goodbye to each other. The next day happened to be a Saturday break, so Ryan planned to sleep well. He was awakened by Hermione when he was sleeping soundly in his bed in the morning, and Ryan saw her standing neatly in the room. Hurry up and say that every Saturday's training can't be lazy because you are not at Hogwarts, she said loudly, pulling the curtains up to let the sunlight shine into the car. Ryan had to be thankful that he had learned to sleep in pajamas for so many years in England, so he would not be rude now. But he was still surprised to block the sunlight outside with his hands and said, Hermione, this is my dormitory, How did you get in? Don't you know that this compartment is the same as our school's dormitory, where girls can enter boys' dormitory? The legend is that the school's founder thinks boys are not as reliable as girls, said Hermione, raising her eyebrows. It's not fair. Ryan vomited and turned to Hermione. Okay, I'm going to get up and wash now. Please wait outside for a while. After washing, Lane came to the carriage corridor, where Hermione was already waiting. The magic of space folding was released here, so the corridor was very spacious and they decided to practice here today. Because today is the first practice of this school year, the two people started a pair of exercises first, which is regarded as a summary of the previous school year, and at the same time, it is a reference for the next step. Naturally, during this pairing, Lane will limit his ability to use only spells and powers similar to Hermione, otherwise it will be meaningless to practice. Through a long experience or studying magic together, Ryan found that although Hermione was not a genius player in the study of combat magic, Harry is a genius. He can overturn Bella with a heart spell just by listening to the spell, although it is only half hanging. But no reverse biting directly down can explain the problem. But her cleverness and hard work can achieve good results on most of the skills, and magic combat is naturally included. For example, this time, Hermione, who only mastered the spells in the textbook, performed better than Daphne, who has a family heritage, in that battle class. In this matchup, Ryan found that after many previous exercises, Hermione began to slowly adapt to Ryan's tactics that were completely out of actual combat and did not follow the routine. For example, she can now predict Ryan's movements to predict his movements, and then cast targeted spells. Many of the magic spells that Ryan could avoid in the past had to be blocked with iron armor, and when she moved her footsteps to change her position, she was almost knocked down by the glass beads she suddenly changed. Fortunately, Ryan recently gained enough combat experience on the Wasteland www.mtlnovel.com so he can easily defeat Hermione in the practice. If you have only the experience of dealing with zombies as before, you might have overturned this time. After the practice, the two gasping men sat directly on the corridor carpet. Hermione wiped the sweat on her forehead and said, I always thought that magical fighting was like the book, two wizards wielding their wands happily, and the flames formed by the magical collision surrounded them. Never thought that magical fighting was so tired, need to constantly move around. Maybe like the Wizard of Dumbledore's level can indeed do what you said. But our current level simply can't judge the details of the enchantment on the opposite side, and at the same time use the magic to accurately offset the magic on the opposite side or choose the right defensive spell. In this case, the only way we can do is to avoid damage by dodge and create a better angle of attack. After all, even if the life spell is even stronger, if you can't hit it, it will not cause damage. Ryan returned to the room and took a pot of prepared sugar and salt water and poured Hermione a drink. I think I've worked hard enough. Why doesn't it feel better than you? Hermione asked, a bit depressed after taking a sip of water. After all, I've practiced longer than you. These things, put it bluntly, besides the knowledge reserve is proficiency. You can't practice enough if you don't. But seriously, you can now use all kinds of magic in combat. This is already very powerful. As far as I know, most of Hogwarts students do not appreciate this. During the battle, they will only choose the magic related to the battle, which is far less flexible than you are now. After listening to Ryan's praise, Hermione's ears began to flush with some embarrassment. Just as she was about to say something, the sound of knocking on the glass window interrupted her. Chapter 154, British Letter. After hearing the sound, Ryan stood up and saw a eagle owl knocking on the glass window of the carriage with several letters. Oh, my Hermes is back. Hermione opened the window and let her owl come in. He took the envelopes that the owl carried and looked at them one by one, and finally handed the two letters to Ryan. This is your letter. Ryan received two letters from Hermione. One was a greeting letter from parents. In the letter, they told Ryan to receive the letter he sent back, hoping that Ryan could take care of himself in Brazil. Ryan felt the warmth of the family from the letter. Another letter was sent by the Weasley twins, who listed 7 or 8 questions with a thick stack of parchment paper. Lane smiled bitterly. It seems that this means overtime again on the weekend. But since it was a decision made by myself to blend in the twins' business, no matter how hard it is, we must continue. Ryan had just read the two letters, and Hermione took a letter and shook it in front of him. This is a letter sent by Ginny to the two of us. I think you have to look at it too. Tear opened the envelope. Ryan and Hermione found that apart from the previous simple greetings and the introduction to the current situation of the school, most of the rest were related to Harry. It seems that she deserves to be Harry's #1 fan. The reason why Ginny wrote this letter is because everyone gathered together to do homework every night in the last year. Sometimes Ginny would go to Ryan or Hermione for counseling. So even if the two of them are not in school this year, they will still write letters to ask for something and tell the school about the status quo. Why don't you think the people we know have had bad luck this week? Hermione said after reading the letter. Harry was directly fainted by the Dementors on the train. The teacher of divination said in the divination class that Harry met an unknown person. Life is about to end. Ginny is very nervous about this, So I would like to ask specifically what happened to our two Harrys. For others, it is good news that Hagrid became a professor, but the eagles and winged beasts he brought to the first class hurt Malfoy. This is a big trouble. As an old family, Malfoy his family will not be willing to give up, hoping that Hagrid will lose his job because of this. And Neville is also badly treated by Professor Snape because of Boggart in the Black Magic Defense class. The worst thing is that there are now hundreds of Dementors around Hogwarts. It is protection, but it is estimated that the school has become not much different from Azkaban. Really do not know the magic. What did the group of people think? Looking at Hermione a little angry, Ryan quickly digressed and said, "You write better than me, so it's up to you to write back to Ginny." "Okay, but I don't know why Harry's response to Dementors is stronger than others. I can't figure out what the unknown in the divination class is." "How to write to Ginny? You can't talk nonsense," Hermione said distressedly. "I really know this." Lane originally wanted to sell the pass, but he quickly said what she knew after seeing Hermione's eyes. "You know, I went to learn the patron saint curse yesterday, and the professor introduced us to the characteristics of the Dementors. An important feature is that it absorbs the happiness of people around and reminds them of the worst moments of their lives." "The worst moment, could it be said?" Hermione's eyes widened and she opened her mouth slightly. "Yes, Harry will recall the day when his parents were killed. That's why he passed out." "I think most other people don't have such a bad experience," Ryan said solemnly. "Although this fact sounds terrible, it is better than what the school now says is a coward." Hermione nodded and then asked, "So unknown?" Ginny said his brother Ron told him, "Harry, it was indeed a huge black dog when he came out of his aunt's house." "Tell Ginny later that she doesn't need to worry. The unreliable professor of divination is well known. I once heard the seniors say that the professor would say that a person will die every year, but it has not been fulfilled so far. According to practice, other professors will respond to this rumor." As for the dog, Harry said that he met in the Mole world. "You know that there are so many people who have dogs in Britain. It's not strange that one or two large black stray dogs are met." "Hermione, I believe you and I should have met." "Really?" Hermione said after thinking about it. "I encountered a black stray dog last year and ran across the street in front of my house." "How come it is so unknown?" "I'm really glad that I didn't report this divination lesson last year, otherwise I can't stand it this year." "Hey, by the way, you said such a big thing. Why didn't Harry write to us too? Do we need to write him a greeting?" "How did he write? Did Harry tell us personally that he was disgraced after he met Dementors?" His stubborn character certainly didn't want to expose his fragile side to friends. "So don't both of us write letters, lest he be upset." Lane thought about it and shook his head to Hermione. "Okay, now you write to Ginny." "I will go back and write a letter to Hagrid and ask him to ask Ron for help. After all, Ron was born in the wizarding world and knows a lot of people. He can definitely introduce Hagrid to a reliable legal aid." Then write to Neville to comfort him. "Okay, after all, we can't help us so far away. www.mplenovel.com. It should also be a letter to greet." Hermione nodded and finally thought of something like that. "Well, can you teach me the patron saint curse now? After all, there are so many Dementors in Hogwarts now. I am worried that if we go back, they will be in danger when they are still there. I think Dumbledore will not allow them to enter the castle. It should be less dangerous. But if you want to learn this magic, I can teach you. After all, which professor has not said that it is not allowed to be rumored?" After saying that, the two said goodbye to each other and then went back to their dorms to write letters. But it took a long time for Ryan's letter to the twin brothers, even in order to be able to afford it on the weekend. Ryan also asked Hermione to help analyze some things. "Where did you learn this from?" Hermione asked, trying to sort these data, and asked curiously www.mplenovel.com. "But you only looked at things related to learning textbooks." "I look more complicated than you." "Of course, this is why I can't pass you in the exam. But if you want to live a good life in the magic world in the future, the optical textbook is definitely not enough." "Okay, what you said might make sense. It's just that I haven't found any knowledge that should be learned in addition to the course," Hermione said as she piled the collated materials on top of a pile of books. With the efforts of two people, they finally rushed to write all the letters that needed to be returned on the weekend. As Hermes slowly flew away with a large pack of letters, Lane's face showed a satisfied smile. Chapter 155, Knowledge and Discussion. The new week is coming, and after a week of classes, Hogwarts students have slowly adapted to Castro Brusio's teaching methods, as well as the accented English of the professors. In this case, everyone starts to choose the class they want to go to, and it is no longer a grade group of students to go to class. Naturally, Daphne of Slytherin ran to class alone, while Ryan went to herbal medicine class with Hermione. Herbalism class, as Castro Brusio's professional advantage, naturally has its own extraordinary place. Unlike the greenhouse at Hogwarts, they were taken to the tunnel group in the park. I heard from the Castro Brusio students around them that their greenhouse was built in the tunnel group. Walked along the depths of the tunnel group for more than 10 minutes, the students came to a huge underground space. This space can even fit a standard football field. In the sky in the middle of the site, there is a light source that emits light and heat. In addition, under the adjustment of a lot of magic, it is divided into multiple areas, with different hydrothermal conditions and magic environment, used to cultivate various plants. Where is this greenhouse? It is simply an ecological dome. Ryan was shocked by Castro's generosity. At the entrance of this ecological dome, the professor of herbal medicine has been waiting there. Ryan soon recognized that he was the professor he had met in the Emerald Dream. The professor clearly recognized Ryan and nodded slightly and greeted Ryan. The content of the third grade course is not difficult. Today's course is a simple small symbiosis composed of 3 special magic plants. The leaves of this small tropical tree, known as mistlo, can be used for the treatment of many magical diseases, but this plant must show the good medicine under the joint action of moss on the trunk and parasitic bacteria on the root of the tree effect. At the same time, neither moss nor parasites can produce nutrients by themselves, can only survive by absorbing nutrients from trees. And today's learning content is to learn this plant and master how to judge the optimal amount of 2 parasites on each tree. Ryan was quickly attracted by a section of knowledge from the professor's explanation. He had encountered many problems in the process of greening the radiation world before, and the professor's knowledge just solved one of the difficult problems perfectly. It's important to know that even Dave and the experts in the college were helpless on this issue. As the old saying goes, there is a sequence of smells, and the art has specialization. There is no omniscient person in the world, especially under different knowledge systems. The solution to the problem is likely to be very different. Just like getting memory from Voldemort's Horcrux, Dumbledore can't do it anyway, but Uncle J can get some memory. This does not mean that Jushua's combat power is higher than that of Professor Dumbledore, but that there are different methods under different power systems. Voldemort is the same. He really has reached a top level of defense against the magic of this system. But in the face of another magic system that Uncle J had never seen before, he still lacked resistance. So Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to quickly continue to ask questions, and also got a satisfactory answer. At this time, he was excited, using the series of data collected before to directly invite many problems he encountered. Because I had seen each other in the Emerald Dream before, this professor started to answer Ryan's questions out of help for the same fellow. But then when Ryan came up with a lot of information, he also moved because he happened to study this aspect. But in the magic world, there was no natural damage like the radiation world. So he can only experiment and observe by artificially creating a micro-ecosphere. Naturally, many of the research results obtained are very different from the real situation. So after listening to Ryan take out this knowledge, he quickly signaled Ryan to stop and then told the students to start independent observation. After explaining the content of the class, the Professor Limara came to his office to discuss in detail, because he had been stuck on this issue for a long time. After half an hour, the professor showed a lot of things on the blackboard in the office, and began to explain to Ryan in a dazzling manner. And Ryan was throwing his own question from time to time and took out a lot of observation data as evidence. Sometimes it will also point out the defects of the professor in the explanation and put forward the correct views confirmed through observation. Even 2 people will quarrel violently because of some problems, and continue to discuss after getting the answer in the quarrel. All in all, now both of them have entered a state of enthusiasm for knowledge. Although the 2 of them met in the Emerald Dream, they just nodded. Lane spends more time communicating with people of the same age, and professors also have other things. They don't have time to communicate with them like these students. However, in this exchange, the system of the magical world mastered by the professor collided fiercely with the knowledge systems of 2 other completely different worlds that Ryan knew, bursting out unprecedented glory. No matter what you do, once you get excited, it is easy to let the situation go beyond your control. And this is the discussion now. Lean in the discussion easily obtained the knowledge that can be used as the heirloom of some small pureblood magic family. Like scientists, many scientists' lifelong research can be fully included in a few hours if no details are needed. You reading www.uukanzu.com or even a more extreme formula is enough. The same is true of the wizard. At least Ryan feels that he has already taken out the baby in the stomach of the professor in the past few hours. Of course, both parties benefited similarly in this conversation. In the face of Ryan's large amount of detailed and effective data and distinctive ideas, the professor feels that the subject he needs to complete in his life is likely to be completely solved in these months. When the 2 were discussing, the bell rang after school. It was only at this time that Ryan was surprised to find that the time had come to noon, and he had spent the whole morning discussing. But this morning Ryan also benefited greatly. After all, with the school density of the magic world, basically, it can be judged that each professor can affect almost all next generation students in the region. In this case, the professor is naturally the best choice, so what can be the life of a professor is not easy. That's why when the professor decided to discuss, he took Ryan directly to his office to avoid all the students, because the knowledge of the magic world is the most valuable. If it weren't for him to hear what Ryan had in hand, it was obviously data that took a lot of resources and time to pile up. Whether it's Dave or the college, they put a lot of energy into the study of botany, and even some observations insisted hundreds of years can greatly advance his research. He wouldn't discuss that with Ryan so deeply because the discussion was over. Ryan was about to leave, and suddenly the professor stopped him and let him wait for a while. Chapter 156, Questions about Knowledge and Pedigree. Ryan is rushing back to sum up these materials, because the most important thing for him today is to link Ryan's plant knowledge and magic knowledge as a link. Let the botanical knowledge that Ryan masters be turned into his own power, and this kind of important magic knowledge cannot be found at all on weekdays. Even if the professor is optimistic about a certain student, the notes given are only part of the extension of the classroom knowledge. If you don't confirm that you want to teach yourself, this core knowledge will never reveal anything from their mouths. So when Ryan was stopped by the professor, he was a little shocked, because he could see that the professor was also anxious to bring the materials obtained from Ryan into his research. Since both people are in a hurry to do their own thing, why did the professor let him stay for a while? The answer was soon revealed. President Fernando walked in from the door with a serious face. After seeing Ryan and the two of them, they said directly, "Old Buck, I came over after receiving your notice. Do you want to start now?" Old Buck? Ryan knew that South Americans had the habit of calling each other by nicknames, and the nicknames related to plants represented the professor as an authority in this respect. But what does the principal say now? Principal Fernando turned to Ryan at this time and said, "Maybe you don't know, you just completed a formal academic exchange between wizards. In this case, as long as one party proposes that this knowledge is not passed on, then it will be guaranteed by magic means things. Of course, in this case, the other party will have to pay the same price." Sure enough, the wizarding community is very strict about the blockade of knowledge. It is estimated that the general hemp wizards do not have enough knowledge at all to fight against those pureblood wizard families. This is why even today the rights of the wizarding world are still firmly in the hands of pure-blooded wizards. No wonder the wizarding world is not developing fast, and everyone is so keen to find the wisdom left by ancient wizards, because this way of inheriting is too easy to cause many things that have been studied before to be lost. People will have to start research again if they want to develop in this direction. This repeated research not only wastes resources, but also greatly slows down the overall progress of the wizarding world. Although Lane has vomited a lot about this conservative knowledge dissemination environment in the wizarding world, it is now on the territory of others, and he can only obey the arrangements of others. Soon, under the direction of the principal, Ryan and the professor held hands together, and the principal pointed at the place where the two men shook hands. 2 hours later, Ryan walked out of the office, rubbing his arms, thinking about the tongue of fire that had just wrapped around his hands. Through the unbreakable oath just now, Ryan and the professor vowed to each other not to disclose any knowledge obtained from each other. At the same time, the principal ruled that Ryan's knowledge was more valuable through a magic prop, so the professor must pay the corresponding price to make up the difference. Ryan naturally chose knowledge as the content of compensation. After all, after knowing the preciousness of knowledge, he must choose the most precious thing. The professor thought about it and wanted to take out a thin notebook as a compensation, but asked Ryan to only see it here and not take it away. After the principal confirmed that the weight of this notebook could make up for the previous gap, Ryan spent more than 2 hours in the office looking at the book the professor gave him, and did not leave until he confirmed that he had mastered the knowledge in the book. The knowledge in the book is the basic content of what the professor said in the speech just now. With this thing, Ryan can go back and study immediately how to use the knowledge of plants to improve his ability. There is no need to spend time backstepping the foundation from the knowledge gained from the discussion, as previously planned. But now the most important thing is to go back to dinner. After all, after a tossing morning, people are already hungry. Lane thought about going straight to the hall. In the lobby, he met Hermione, who had just come over to dinner after the metamorphosis class. After seeing Ryan, she asked, "What did you do with the professor just upstairs? Why didn't the metamorphosis classes come back?" Lane looked at the crowd around him and said, "I'm hungry all morning, let me finish my meal." Hermione also found that too many people around were not suitable for talking, so she buried her head and ate quietly. Waiting for 3 people and making 2 hurriedly finished lunch, on the way back to the carriage to pick up the afternoon textbook, Ryan told Hermione about the morning things, mainly highlighting the magic world's confidentiality of knowledge, and gave it to her as evidence. A trace of an unbreakable oath on his arm. Hermione's face was a bit ugly after listening to Ryan's story. Does this mean that Mole wizards are very different from pure-blood wizards? After all, according to what you see, they represent pure-blood wizards. It is likely to possess countless knowledge that we have no access to at all. No matter how hard the hemp wizards are, there is no way to change the status of the magic world. You don't have to worry so much. Ryan wanted to shun the past, but watching Hermione's serious eyes suddenly reminded her that she could set a lifelong ambition in the 4th grade. This means that Hermione's knowledge in some respects is far more mature than that of ordinary people. I thought that Ryan decided to discuss this matter with her seriously. Okay, your worry is right. Ryan finished and revealed a series of cruel truths to Hermione. I got some information from Percy www.mplnovel.com. It shows that the Ministry of Magic has there are a large number of hemp wizards, but they are generally grassroots staff in various departments, such as memory counselors, auras, etc. The managers of each department are basically pure blood. In the important Wesingamo and Mystery department, Absolutely most of the members come from various magical families, and the only hemp wizards appear as members of a pureblood family after marrying with pureblood. Speaking of which, Ryan suddenly remembered that Hermione could become the Minister of Magic in the original book. It is likely that after marrying her and Ron, the Weasley family, the most important pureblood family after the war, stood behind. It's the same economically. The shops on Diagon Alley are basically ancestral products passed down from generation to generation of pureblood wizards, and hemp seeds are mostly used as migrant workers. Regardless of Hermione's increasingly ugly complexion, Ryan went on to say, according to our most disgusting black magic, every year people who are caught in Azkaban because of black magic account for a large proportion of hemp wizards. For example, the half-hanging black wizards in Upturned Alley are mostly hemp seeds. How is it possible? Hermione made a surprised voice, because in her impressions, black magic has already drawn the equal sign at Slytherin College, and Slytherin students are pureblood and a small amount of mixed blood. So she always thought that only pureblood loved black magic. It was natural to hear Ryan say this at this time. The two had returned to their carriages at this time. After sitting down at the table in Lane's dormitory, Lane poured a glass of water for both himself and Hermione and said, "This is true. You will understand it after listening to my analysis." Chapter 157, Thinking. After taking a sip of water, Hermione put the glass on her hand and made a serious listening gesture. Ryan cleared his throat and said, "It is true that pureblood wizards will be very in-depth in the study of black magic, but they usually need little use of black magic. After all, apart from individual families, most pureblood families have accumulated for a long time. The wealth and the relationship network built are enough for them to live, and they don't have to be shirtless." Hermione nodded in agreement. Ryan went on to say, while hemp wizards are different, they basically have no social relationship in the wizarding world. After graduation, they have no other way but to enter the Ministry of Magic or go to the shop to work as an employee. But the magic world, the closure and small scale of the decision also determined that the jobs that can be provided each year are not enough. This means that many hemp wizards will face the situation of unemployment after graduation. And in the Mole world, they have at most only one elementary school diploma, which means that they are basically impossible to continue their studies in the Mole world, and they can't find any good jobs. Once they can't control their abuse of magic, they will soon be arrested by the Ministry of Magic. That is to say, once the Mole chooses to enter the magical world, they will basically sever ties with the Mole world and cannot go back. And in the wizarding world is equally bad. Except for schools, they basically have no other way to acquire knowledge. But in the magic world, knowledge is equal to power, power is equal to status. Without sufficient knowledge reserves, it means that they will always be at the bottom. Occasionally a few lucky people may become part of a pureblood family. There are more women here. They will become full-time housewives, or use the power of the husband's family to enter the circle of pureblood wizards. For example, Diagon Alley, there are several shops whose bosses are called What Kind of Lady, and among them are hemp wizards. But the male bosses in those shops are all pureblood. Hearing this, Hermione opened her mouth to say something, but then he shrank back, as though thinking of something. The work in the magic world is not easy to find, and the Mole world can't go back. In this case, they can only take risks to learn some black magic that is dangerous to users and targets to enhance their strength. However, the black spread outside magic generally has great side effects, and these people do not have the valuable experience mastered by pureblood wizards, so it is easy to fall into the darkness completely. This is how many black wizards in Upside Down Alley come here. After Ryan's words, the dormitory fell silent. Then Hermione asked in a strange tone, "Are these all true?" "Why don't I know at all?" "Of course you don't know. As our students, the scope of our activities is nothing more than Diagon Alley, platforms 9 3/4, Hogwarts College, and a Hogsmeade Village. This year, how are we in this situation? Maybe see those dark places in the magic world." Hermione stared at Ryan. "It's hard to imagine. I never paid attention to these." "Do you say these are true?" "It's true. The origins of the Ministry of Magic and all the people in Diagon Alley, and how many black wizards are caught each year are not confidential. Percy talked to me a lot recently, and he didn't need to lie to me on this. And I think this status quo is also very logical." "Logical?" "I don't think it's logical to discriminate against hemp wizards and moles." "Why do those pureblood wizards do this?" Hermione asked, confused. "Like Greek and Latin in a British civil service examination, the British mass education institutions cannot find Greek and Latin teachers at all. Only private aristocratic schools can provide Greek and Latin teaching from junior high school. Maintaining the proportion of Greek and Latin in the British higher civil examinations can maintain the monopoly of the upper class under the guise of pretending to be fair and fair. The Mole world is the same, and so is the wizard." As an example, explain to Hermione why the pureblood family does this. "Injustice. Is this what is hidden under the beautiful and magical appearance of the magic world?" Hermione put the glass on the table and leaned on the back of the chair to close her eyes and think about something. The sunlight slowly slanted westward, reflecting a golden red light on the red wallpaper and carpet shining on the house. The afternoon session must have started, but Hermione was still sitting still in her chair. In this case, Ryan can only give up the afternoon classes here. Finally Hermione came back to God and said, Sorry, you are delayed in class. Now we can get over with the book. Maybe we can catch up with the second class. Ryan took a breath when she saw that Hermione had returned to normal. He had been worried that what he said too much would have a bad influence on Hermione. Even if she will become the Minister of Magic in the future to lead the magic world reform, but she is only 13 or 14 years old. These things are still a bit too much for her age. Actually said so much today because Ryan was also confused. The earliest he discovered that it seemed to be a rebirth, he decided to make money for a lifetime. After having a golden finger, he hopes to find his way home through the golden finger. Later, when I went to Hogwarts to go to school and became familiar with everyone, I felt that Voldemort should be killed. Now, Ryan feels that all the previous plans can see the hope of completion. At this time, he is confused about the future goals. Going home is not possible in a moment and a half. Ryan feels that he is likely to live long here, time to find the way home. In this case, the world is very important to him. Killing Voldemort just destroys the old world. So what should the new world look like? Who is a friend in the process of creating a new world? Who is the enemy? Should I participate in this process? What should I do if I participate? These are the questions that Lane thought about repeatedly but did not get answers. www.mplnovel.com. Today, Lane and Hermione said so much, hoping to get some inspiration. But now it seems that Hermione may not be as mature as imagined. But it doesn't matter, anyway. There is enough time to think. Not to mention that Wanji grocery store also brought Ryan enough worlds as a reference for the new world. In the days after, everything seemed to return to normal. But Hermione seemed to be more busy. When she was studying in the library once, Ryan saw her reading books about the history of magic. Friday afternoon during the patron saint learning, the combat class professor really found a Dementor to use for actual combat tests. Because of his practice of Middle-earth Taoism, Ryan was able to restrain this evil creature, so he was only slightly affected when faced with Dementors. This made him easily release a thick silver smoke to block the Dementor's attack. At the end of the course that afternoon, all three of them could release silver smoke from the Dementor to stop its progress. At the same time, in the absence of Dementors, their smoke vaguely shows an animal. Professor therefore announced that their course was over, because he had already taught what he could teach, and the remaining body guardian deities needed constant practice and self-understanding. Ryan left the classroom after thanking Professor. He decided to practice more in private, because he was really curious about what his patron saint would look like. Chapter 158, An Analysis of the Current State of the Magic World. The following time is as usual, weekend fighting practice, as usual, class every day. The only difference is that at the request of Hermione, Ryan began to teach the usage of the patron saint in combat practice. The patron saint curse is indeed a high-level curse. Even Hermione, a genius who can use magic simply by reading textbooks, has encountered difficulties in learning this curse. After 2 days of practice, she can only release a ray of 1. The plume of silver smoke seems to be a long way from reaching the practical stage. The day passed like this, until Ryan, who finished lunch on Friday, had just returned to the dorm and heard Hermione knocking on the door outside. Fortunately, she didn't rush in directly this time. Ryan walked to the door and opened the door while thinking. The door opened, and Ryan found Hermione standing outside with a serious face, holding a thick book in her hand. "What is this?" When the two were seated, Ryan asked, pointing at the book that Hermione had placed on the table. "This is the information I collected in the library after listening to what you said last week about Mole wizards, Muzz and pureblood wizards." Hermione opened her notebook and wrote it densely in Duangxiu's font. "A lot of things. It's thanks to Castro Bruce is an international school. I can find a lot of information about the world in the library. From these materials I have found some places that I have never paid attention to before." Hermione, while watching her notes, she said to Ryan, "Actually, the status of Mole wizards and Muzz has improved compared to before. For example, a few decades ago, in the new continent, due to the laws of the Rape Paport law, the marriage of Muzz and wizards was even banned. And Britain is not much better. If a wizard wants to marry a Mole, he must put away his wand and cut the magical world from now on. Now the world has progressed to allow the marriage between wizards and moles, and some wizards are allowed to Muzz as family members expose their identity as wizards." "You mean this, the magic world can slowly improve and change itself? Don't we need to try to promote change?" Ryan asked. Hermione praised the progress of the magic world a bit strangely. He thought that Hermione would attack the inadequacy of the magic world as soon as he came up. It was unexpected that Hermione directly described the progress of the wizards, which made Ryan puzzled and did not know what Hermione wanted to express. "No, of course not." Hermione shook her head. "I just want to show that there is progress in the magic world, and we need to summarize the examples of successful progress in the magic world and learn from these examples for our own actions." Experience. After all, after checking the information, I found that the magic world still has a bad attitude towards the mage wizards and moles. This situation needs to be changed urgently. For example, I have seen several cases where a wizard killed a person, depending on whether he killed a pure-blooded wizard, a mole wizard or a mole. and the punishment of his different lineages would be different. This naked description of the wizarding world is from the Bones' contempt for those wizards who are not pure blood. Not to mention that I will never forget that when Lucius Malfoy humiliated my parents in the bookstore last year, most of the wizards around disregarded this situation and neglected my parents, and it was all because my parents were not a magical mole. Maybe this matter had a great impact on Hermione. Ryan found that the whole person shivered with excitement when she said this. Just as the newspaper said Sirius, who escaped from prison, killed 12 muls in one breath in the street. But the magic world only cares about the killed wizard. The dead mul was exploded by a gas. The excuses slandered the past and did not receive any compensation for errors in the magic world. So I want to do something to change the status quo. After all, our loved ones and many of our friends are not magic. When the pureblood wizards rule, the magic world of prejudice and discrimination makes them easy to become the wrong victim of the magic world. Hermione quickly recovered her calm and concluded. So what do you think we should do? Ryan asked seriously, adjusting his sitting posture. After all, the pureblood wizard is now deeply entrenched in the wizarding world. He now hopes to hear what useful suggestions Hermione can make to change this situation. For this matter, I collected a week's worth of information and carefully studied a previous person who changed the status of the magic world on a large scale, Gellert Grindelwald. Hermione did not explain the problem positively, but began to talk about her information previously found. Gellert Grindelwald is that the Dark Wizard defeated by Dumbledore. Yes, for at least a few hundred years. Only he has done the magic world to change himself on a large scale. I think his experience has some merits. He announced that with the development of the Mul world, Muls will slowly destroy the entire world. At the same time, due to the advancement of technology, the wizards will one day be seriously threatened. So he believes that the wizards should break through the old laws to rule the world. At the same time, he also pointed out that he does not hate any Muls, but he thinks that Muls lack vision and need wizards to lead them forward, which is why he wants to rule Muls. This is nothing special. Every powerful villain will always propose a seemingly justified reason to appeal to ordinary people and attract followers, Ryan said. However, Grindelwald proposed that as long as a wizard, everyone should be equal, and the lineage is not important. www.mplnovel.com. At the same time, he believes that Muls and wizards can also live in harmony, but only in the order he designed. Because of this slogan, a large number of non-pureblood wizards at the bottom and wizards close to Muls were attracted to him. Finally, after the war, many magic departments controlled by pureblood were hit hard, and those pureblood were also recognizing the power of non-pureblood wizards. It was only afterwards that a large number of laws were modified to yield a lot of benefits. Hermione stood up in excitement at this point and said with a loud voice, "It's just that the war launched by Grindelwald did not affect the United Kingdom, so the status of the rule of pureblood wizards in Britain is still unshakable, even if Professor Dumbledore has tried to solve this problem through gentle means for decades. But now it seems that this gentle method is basically useless. The progress of Britain is entirely due to the loss of the backbone of many pureblood families and even the death of the mysterious people. As a result, the pureblood family has insufficient manpower and has to tolerate the impureblood forces to fill the vacancies the result of. So now is the best time. The power of pureblood wizards in the United Kingdom has been weakened, and the hemp and mixed blood wizards have been trained. The only problem is that those pureblood wizards also try to grasp the magic world. This shows, in the process of improving the magic world, we are not fighting alone, and we don't even need us to stand up as leaders for the time being. What we need to do now is start from a small place, and start to apply it little by little from the classmates around us. Influence. Finally achieve the purpose of changing the British magic world. After all, we are still young and have enough time. Hermione finally said concludingly. Chapter 159, Book Club. Looking at Hermione, who was speaking so much and praised my expression, Leon was shocked. He really didn't expect a teenage girl to think so much. Think about the collection of cards that you were still thinking about the simple noodles at this age. I have to say that there is indeed a difference between people. But think about it too. It turned out that people in the 4th grade were able to create a house self-rights promotion association. In the 3rd grade, with sufficient data analysis, they can further do this in their personal matters related to their families. Not difficult to understand. So after listening to Hermione's analysis, Ryan exclaimed, "You were really awesome when you gave a speech." After listening to the speech you just made, I think I have done far less than you did on this issue. You treat me the issues that have been vaguely considered before are thoroughly explained. After hearing Ryan's praise, Hermione blushed embarrassedly and said, "I've been studying this issue in the library this week, and I was surprised to find that this series of problems in the magic world due to the bloodline is actually thousands of years ago. It's already started." Having said this, Hermione paused and saw Ryan listening attentively, so he continued, "But there have only been 2 major changes in the Western magic world. One was when some wizards killed the Muls at the peak in the era of the Great Navigation. As a result, some Mul wizards could not accept the use of Mul power to set off witch hunts, and later they were used by some evil wizards to cause heavy casualties on both sides. The conflict also led to the introduction of international secrecy laws. The other is Grindelwald's war behavior of breaking the secrecy law under the pretext of protecting the world, which objectively promoted the affirmative movement of the wizarding world. At least in today's mainstream understanding, it is a consensus that non-pure-blood wizards are also wizards. So even if he is evil, even if he wants to provoke a full-scale war, we need to thank him on this. Even after reading the materials decades ago, I felt that his original intention was probably not evil, or even great. But after that, his approach went completely dark. This is something we should be warned of. You see, the cost of these two changes is at the cost of war. And I hope we can find a way with a smaller loss. We can minimize the loss while changing the magic world. So where do you think we should start? Hermione's goal is indeed very attractive, and it is in line with Lane's own thinking about those things in private. So Ryan wanted to know what specific means she had to achieve this goal. Well, I think we can set up a book club first. After hearing Ryan's question, Hermione said some periods of AI. What? Ryan was shocked by Hermione's turning point. Originally listening to Hermione's narration of such a big thing, what big plan did he think he had to carry out? The result was simply to set up a book club. What do you think it would be? Hermione said with raised eyebrows. I just said that because of the war more than 10 years ago, the British magic world is now in a rare period of balance. For the time being, no big conflicts will erupt. And I think we need to change the world in a subtle way. So, is there anything wrong with choosing to start slowly from the book club? It turned out to be the case, and Ryan finally knew why Hermione had such a view. After all, except for a very few people, who would have thought that the ashes of Voldemort would make a comeback and trigger a new war. In this case, it is natural for her to choose a stable and time-consuming plan based on the prospect of peace. Ryan felt that if this were the case, he might not be able to seize the opportunity of shuffling the entire magical world due to war. It will take a long decades for this process, but before a better alternative can be figured out, Hermione's plan is undoubtedly the best choice now. As for the opportunities triggered by the war, it is estimated that Ryan's own strength will be more on the next step. It is enough to adapt to the situation. Ah, you are right. Ryan nodded solemnly. I just took it for granted. But I can ask about how the book club should develop. How did you plan? That's what I'm going to tell you soon. Hermione turned the book to a certain page and read. Our short-term goal is to explain our ideas through a book club, regardless of bloodline, to attract like-minded people and spread some magical knowledge. After all, the world of the wizards is still supreme. It is very important to fill this shortboard first. I know you have a lot of very deep knowledge. I hope you can make sacrifices and share that knowledge. There are too few ways to get knowledge. You may be the only place to get knowledge in the short term. No problem. Lane agreed readily. If you want to change something, you can't do it alone. Even as strong as Dumbledore and Voldemort have a large group of followers. In this case, it is acceptable to pay for something to get everyone's support. Anyway, the content and objects taught will be controlled by Ryan himself, and will not cause major problems. Seeing Ryan agree, Hermione was encouraged, and then said in a pleasant tone, our long-term goal is temporarily to enable all wizards to live in a place not based on their blood, but on their ability and the pros and cons of character to evaluate their magical world. I have a dream? Ryan asked. Yes, I think there were a lot of ideas in that speech, so I borrowed from it. Is there any problem? No. www.mtlnovel.com. I think this is good. Please continue. If you decide to join, there are now 2 people in the reading club. I decided to apply for a professor now and turn the reading club into a social organization allowed by the school, so that we can recruit people in a fair and honest manner. Of course, in order to avoid early inducing conflict, in my application I will describe the book club as a learning and mutual aid group, waiting for someone to invite them to influence them subtly. Wait, I remember you have been going straight. Why did you choose to make such a big bend on this? Ryan asked, somewhat puzzled. Because the information I saw tells me that if the camp is clearly divided at the beginning, conflicts will inevitably arise later. I did not want to cause those conflicts, so I naturally chose a roundabout tactic. Although this does not fit my personality at all, but I can accept it for my dreams. Hermione shrugged helplessly when she finished. Of course, we can't start activities abroad for the first time now. We can take advantage of this opportunity to sort out what we know and prepare publicity materials, and we can start as soon as Hogwarts. Finally Hermione arranged the plan, ended the conversation. As the end. After Hermione left, Lane smashed herself on the bed and closed her eyes, thinking about what she had just said. After going through the whole thing, Ryan found that although Hermione still had some naivety and shortcomings, there was no problem with the general direction. After confirming this, Ryan decided to take this matter seriously. Chapter 160, Societies and Pets of Nature. After eating at noon the next day, Ryan and Hermione went to Professor Sprout to prepare to register to form a society. There are not many clubs in Hogwarts. Ravenclaw and Slytherin may have some research clubs. The only club Gryffindor Lane knows about is the Quidditch team. This reason is entirely due to the strict management of Hogwarts, because Hogwarts students account for at least 80% of the same age of wizards in the UK. In other words, anything here may affect the future British magic world. That's why after Harry set up a society that was not recognized by the school when he was in 5th grade, Dumbledore even paid the price of leaving the school to keep Harry free. Indeed, There is a cause of conflict between the school and the Ministry of Magic. But this also shows that the establishment of associations is also very important in itself, and the establishment of illegal associations is more serious than ordinary violations of school regulations. Ryan always felt that such strictness was probably caused by Hogwarts before. For example, more than half a century ago, a little wizard born in an orphanage privately organized a group of followers. Later, this organization of fan support became a frightening Death Eater in the magic world, and the little wizard also became the second generation of the Dark Lord Voldemort. With this lesson, Hogwarts naturally strictly controls all student organizations because the lessons of that year were too painful, and even exaggerated that the establishment of Death Eaters caused the British magic world to sacrifice a generation. This also led Ryan and Hermione to feel a little uneasy when they went to apply for a book club together. After all, they were going to set up an organization to hold private goods. If the motive tendencies are different, how to look is very similar to that of the Death Eaters. After knocking on the door of Professor Sprout's room, the professor wearing a robes at home opened the door for them. After seeing Ryan and the two of them, the professor asked a little strangely, "You don't take a lunch break at this time? Is there anything to come to me?" "Professor, we would like to apply to you to establish a society." Hermione stepped forward. "Oh? Societies? What kind of societies do you want to establish? What are the reasons for establishing societies?" The professor immediately became serious after hearing Hermione's words. "We want to set up a book club to exchange learning experience with each other," Ryan said, according to the content discussed in advance. "Because we came to Castro Bruscio a lot of fresh knowledge this time, we encountered many difficulties in the learning process. However, these difficulties were gradually solved in our mutual discussion. So the two of us, I think if you can organize people who are willing to communicate together and use everyone's wisdom to solve problems, will learning efficiency be improved? At the same time, you can learn more knowledge in communication." "Well, yes, I think your idea is very good. As far as I know, there are similar organizations within Ravenclaw, but they never accept people from other colleges. You are willing to become an academic exchange organization is also a good thing. I will write a letter of recommendation to you now, and then you can write down the content and reason of the establishment of the association to the Principal McGonagall. I think if there is no accident, you can get approval this week." After leaving from Professor Sprout, Ryan sent a letter to Professor McGonagall. Then they entered a long wait. Fortunately, in less than a week, they received a reply from Professor McGonagall approving the establishment of the society. "This is far easier than they thought. I thought this permission could not be approved." In the library, Hermione said to Ryan with a reply from Professor McGonagall. "After all, we asked a few seniors and elder sisters, and all said that it is more difficult to establish these associations. We thought things were complicated. The society is a group of people who share the same hobbies and communicate with each other. The two of us at the end of the 2-year final exams in this grade have established a learning-related society. Normal. And such a society will not involve any bad things in terms of content. Not to mention that Professor McGonagall, as the dean of our college, will definitely raise our hands. So now that it has been approved, you need to hurry up and sort out the information so as not to get messy when you get it." Hermione advised Ryan a little nervously. "Relax, I pay attention to this matter. There will be no problem." In the days after, Ryan seemed to be much busy. After all, in addition to daily study and the exchange of Emerald Dreams, he also summed up a set of teaching materials needed by the community. Lucky Ryan can quickly recover his fatigue through the Emerald Dream, so that he can persevere in this busy. Now in the Emerald Dream, Ryan has discussed with these people of the same age around the totem pole several times and exchanged experience and knowledge with each other. The herbalist professor with the nickname Old Bark only appeared once, and disappeared in a hurry after showing his face. I heard a student who had a good relationship with him saying that because the professor was busy with scientific research recently, he had no energy to teach students here. The knowledge exchanged last time was really important to the professor. Ryan thought of it after learning the current status of which professor. After all, what the professor lacks is a long-term large-scale observation record. This kind of thing can only be done with a lot of manpower, material resources, and time investment. The knowledge exchanged between the two sides was indeed the same last time, but in addition to the knowledge itself, what Ryan brought out could also save the professor a lot of money and time. Last time when President Fernand was acting as a witness, he assured Ryan that he could gain something other than knowledge and would never suffer a loss here. It's just that the compensation promised hasn't happened yet. I don't know what will happen in the end, but for Lane www.mplnovel.com anyway, the most important knowledge is already available, and the principal will not lie on some money or honor. So Ryan's attitude towards the compensation afterwards is quite correct. On the contrary, the principal was a little embarrassed. At the last meeting in the Emerald Dream, he also patted his chest again to make sure Ryan was thinking about these things after entering the Emerald Dream. The 6 students began to discuss the issue of the pet of nature. Suddenly a girl wearing a skeleton mask asked Ryan, "Well, do you have a pet of nature?" "Nature's pet? What is that?" Ryan asked with a confused look. "Sorry, you know that I'm a foreigner. I don't quite understand what the term favored nature means." "Ah, Sorry, I usually see you so fluent in Spanish. I forgot that you came from England. The girl thought about it and made a special gesture with her hand. A small green vortex was opened too. A small tree half a person tall came out of it. Look, this is the pet of nature. The girl said a little proudly. It is a pet that can accompany you into the Emerald Dream and can play a special role here. For example, my tree man is usually just a pot planted in a flower pot. In the Emerald Dream, I can become a few meters tall tree man and me fighting adventure together. Of course, some people's natural pets are animals, and they can have more interaction in the real world. However, the flaw is that there is no plant in the Emerald Dream that has a high degree of fit with the environment. Oh, yes, I also have it. Ryan gave a positive answer after watching the young lady's presentation to figure out what nature's pet is. Chapter 161, Adventure in the Emerald Dream. Under the eyes of everyone, Ryan asked them to wait for a while because its natural pet is a bit far away. He needs to go to the real world to call the guy back. Everyone nodded to express their understanding, especially a senior who raised a black jaguar as a pet of nature said that his pet of nature has never been quietly beside him. Rising from the bed in the dormitory, the moonlight shone from the outside through the curtains, and there was silence all around. This should be when the sound barrier on the carriage will be turned on once sleeping at night, and will not be turned off until the time to get up in the morning. Lane opened the door to the world of Plants vs. Zombies and began to summon Xioking through the magic contract. Because Xioking is a magical plant that needs enough energy to grow anyway, and Ryan can't arrange a sufficient rechargeable circle to provide energy to his snake-like Slytherin. Ryan, who discovered this at the time, originally intended to remove the magic circle. It turned out that the magic circle was something of Hogwarts Castle itself. The whole magic circle was naturally connected with the foundation of the castle. It should be together when the castle was built. After all, this castle was Slytherin's castle. It is understandable that he built an underground pet room or laboratory for himself. However, this practice led Ryan to look at the enchanted magic circle. After all, it was mixed with the foundation of the castle. If it is not demolished, it will collapse the entire castle. Not to mention that there are countless protective magic on the foundation of the castle. Ryan can't have the confidence to completely remove the magic array without triggering any magic. Therefore, after Xioking grew up slowly, Ryan found that simply planting it in a flower pot would not allow him to continue to grow, and Ryan did not have enough money to feed him. Fortunately, one grocery store can lead to several worlds. After traveling in multiple worlds, Xioking is now in love with the zombies in the world of Plants vs. Zombies and various monsters in the world of radiation. Because on the one hand Ryan forbids him to eat any intelligent creatures, on the other hand he also found that in those worlds, the energy contained in the intelligent creatures is far less than those mutant monsters. For example, Xioking's most highly evaluated food is a legendary Deathclaw and a giant zombie carrying a ghost. Now Xioking is looking for zombies to eat in the world of Plants vs. Zombies, so Ryan will tell other people that his natural pet is a bit far away. 10 minutes later, a green shadow emerged from the door of the space, feeling the growth of its life magic and inner pleasure. Lane knew that it should have been very happy recently. Xioking hadn't seen his master for a long time, so after seeing Ryan, he climbed happily on his arm and circled around his arm. Ryan finally calmed it down before lying back on the bed and entering the Emerald Dream. Entering the Emerald Dream, the 6 students with wooden masks are still chatting. After seeing Ryan coming back, a girl stood up and asked happily, "Did you bring your pet of nature? Show us." Ryan smiled and nodded, reaching out to let Xioking crawl out. Xioking was not afraid of life because he spent a lot of time outside, and quickly climbed down the grass along Ryan's arm. Wow, it's so cute. A few girls' eyes emerged with caution, and the boys also showed their favorite eyes. It is no wonder that everyone likes Xioking, because in fact, Xioking's hunting behavior in both worlds is constantly destroying evil unnatural creatures, so it has also been loved by natural consciousness. This led to Xioking's growing combat mode that grew larger than the basilisk after growing up. But the daily image became more and more lovely. The whole scales are as green as the emeralds, and they are matched with cute round heads and cat ears and jewel-like eyes. The whole looks like a beautiful gem sculpture. No wonder people like it. What power does this snake have? One asked. It seems that they did not recognize Xioking's mutant plant identity, but believed that Xioking was a special snake. It can be 8 meters long when fighting, and it is also poisonous. Ryan was also happy that they misunderstood Xioking's identity and was misleading in the explanation. Okay, since everyone has their own pet of nature, so let's go to the Rongshihang today to clean it up. The oldest student stood up and said, in the approval of everyone, 7 people set off. On the way, a boy explained to Ryan the Banyan Tree Pit, a tanking near the school in the Emerald Dream, famous for the large banyan tree inside. The earliest site of the blood sacrifice of the Black Wizard, Castro Brushuo's ancestors once cleaned up the evil wizards. However, it was later discovered that the Emerald Dream of that place became imitated dream of the dead because of a long blood sacrifice, and some evil and uncontrolled undead will come out from time to time. However, since the undeads in that place are not so strong as long as they don't accumulate, They later became the adventure locations of the students in the Emerald Dream. www.mtlnovel.com. Soul strength has increased to a certain extent. Everyone walked across the river around the school for a few minutes and saw the location of the Banyan Tree Pit. In the Emerald Dream, the blood of the sky was very conspicuous. Before approaching, Ryan discovered that the Banyan Tree Pit in the Emerald Dream was a sky pit with a diameter of more than 200 meters. There are various trees under the sky, but if you look closely, you can see that both the tree and the ground are inlaid with human bones, and some faint red shadows appear and disappear in the pit. After using his eagle eye skills to observe, Ryan saw a disgusting breath of undead emanating from the shadow. "This is?" Ryan asked, pointing at the blood-red shadows. "Ah, that's the shadow of death." In addition to the Emerald Dream, there is a world of the dead. The world is different from the real post-death world. The world of the dead is the opposite of the Emerald Dream, full of the atmosphere of death and chaos. It is pierced here. There is a door to the world of the dead, so some of the shadows of death that originally lived in the world of the dead slipped out from there. In order to prevent them from harming the Emerald Dream after they have gathered more, we will come here regularly to clean up. "Okay, here we go." "Let's go down," said the oldest boy at the time. Then Ryan followed everyone down the giant vine like a small pagoda on the edge of the tanking to the bottom of the pit. After reaching the bottom of the pit, everyone under the command of the leader slowly approached the shadows of death. Ryan was arranged behind the leader. This is a kind of care for novices. After all, Ryan has not been exposed to these before. Arranging behind the leader is safe and can see how others do it, which helps quickly learn how to deal with these shadows of death. Chapter 162, Pampering and Refra. In the sky pit of the Emerald Dream, a large number of plants grow indiscriminately at the bottom of the pit. The interlacing of the trees reveals gaps, allowing sunlight to project a dappled light spot below. One green and one black figure swiftly shuttled through the jungle, and soon the two figures approached the position of those pale red blood shadows. At this time, the two figures concealed themselves behind a large stone. Ryan found that the senior in front of him slowly began to change, and gradually entered the state of battle. The tally contract and his own natural pet were combined into one. Head above, a pair of cat ears emerged, and a tail grew behind him. Of course, if these things grow up on the cute girl, it will be very cute, and on the muscular guy, it will be a bit spicy. However, after the two became one, Ryan clearly found that the senior's breath jumped up sharply, and the flexibility and speed of the whole Zero were far beyond the original state. It seems that this method can temporarily borrow some of the abilities of your pet, but it is not known whether this method can be used outside the Emerald Dream. At this time, the former seniors kindly explained to Ryan, this kind of cooperation emphasizes that the synchronization rate with pets is high. Among them, animal pets are easier to cooperate with, but the synchronization rate is easy to repeat. Plant pets are more difficult to breed and have benefits. It is more stable in cooperation. After the synchronization rate reaches a certain level, you can use this trick in the outside world. I know that the principal and the professor of herbal medicine can do this. You can try it now. I can give pointers next to it. Take a look. This knowledge is free? Ryan asked in surprise. After all, I experienced a degree of concern about knowledge in the magic world before, and I was suspicious of this free knowledge. Of course not. How can there be free knowledge in the world? It's just that for someone like you who can enter the Emerald Dream independently, as long as you know this kind of cooperation, you can quickly figure it out. So out of good for the purpose of the relationship, I can naturally tell you this basic knowledge for free. It's just that you want to know how to give full play to the power of pets. That knowledge can either be explored by yourself, or you can only change it with us. Although this statement is too realistic, it does not make people happy. But the senior still chose to speak these things upright, and Ryan also had a good impression on him. After all, these things are straightforward and clearer than the veiled ones are more conducive to Lane's own next choice. Under the guidance of the senior, Ryan and Xiaoqing started the first fusion experiment. With a burst of green light, Ryan can clearly feel Xiaoqing's power and his integration. This kind of feeling Ryan felt that he was not like the feeling that the beginner said that the beginner should have, but like the feeling that the synchronization rate with the pet is high to a certain extent. Ryan started to be a little surprised, but later figured out the reason. Xiaoqing itself is a plant rather than an animal, which has an inherent advantage, and Xiaoqing's wisdom also allows it to communicate with Ryan easily, not like other plants. It's just that there is a very ignorant soul, and it takes a long time to cultivate to cooperate. More importantly, unlike other people who cultivated their natural pets from an early age, Ryan can be said to have created Xiaoqing completely from scratch. This made Xiaoqing regard Ryan as his creator and gave all his loyalty, especially after Xiaoqing was recognized by nature consciousness. The synchronization rate of Xiaoqing and Ryan reached a very high level. Even Ryan could feel that even in the real world he could fit with Xiaoqing. Therefore, Ryan doesn't need to explore how to use Xiaoqing's ability now. Xiaoqing's intelligence is enough to tell him how to use his ability. After merging with Xiaoqing, Ryan's reaction speed and flexibility of the body were greatly improved, while gaining infrared vision and subcutaneous scale armor. In addition, Ryan gained the magic of venom spraying and controlling thorns, and was able to temporarily restore physical strength by drinking water and basking in the sun. He didn't change much in appearance, only his eyes became snake eyes. Saw Ryan successfully transformed in such a short period of time, the leader of the lead showed a surprised look on his face, because for him, this is also the first time that a novice can do so well. Okay, just look at what I do and you can just learn, the senior said with some interest. It was obvious that he was stimulated by Ryan. Soon after, the senior student battled with the shadows of death, and he used his flexible advantages to rush through the woods. At the same time, he continued to use magic wands to launch some natural magic to attack the shadows of death chasing him. Doesn't look very difficult, at least for individuals like Ryan who have experienced many wars in person. Now this grade is at most a level of small-scale conflict. Those shadows of death attack methods are also very simple. In addition to direct melee combat, only the blood red gas arrow is used as an attack method. Not to mention that the shadows of death will stop before each launch of the air arrow, and then the hole swells into a ball, which is easy to be found in advance. No wonder a few students came to this place and dispersed directly, and dared to bring a completely newbie, Ryan, to this place. It turns out that this place is at most novice village. Thinking here, Ryan feels that he can just experiment with his newly learned things, such as the Shenxi Alpha that he just learned last time. Think about it. Ryan quickly used magic to form a rune on his hand, and then patted a shadow of death. Palm thunder. As Ryan's chanting www.mtlnovel.com, a silver-white arc suddenly flew out of Ryan's hand, rushing to the shadow of death a few meters away. The shadow of death turned into a green smoke directly after being struck by a palm, and then a red bin-sized bead fell to the ground. Is thunder and lightning magic so useful? You actually killed a shadow of death, the senior said in surprise after seeing Ryan's actions just now. After all, although the shadow of death can't attack, it's not so easy to deal with. Even the seniors have to use several magic to kill one. I don't know this. By the way, what is this red bead used for? Ryan felt that he could not explain to the senior what the Eastern Alpha, so he quickly asked the subject. Oh, we also don't have an official name for this thing. It's just that everyone looks at it and directly calls it a blood drop. This is also something that is rare in the Emerald Dream and can be brought to the real world. It can be brought into reality. It sounds so powerful. What use is it? Ryan knew that there were not many things that could be used in the Emerald Dream and reality at the same time. For example, Ryan's own plants can only rely on strength and not bringing it in directly. The flowers and trees in the Emerald Dream can hardly be brought out. So when he knew that this thing could be brought to reality, he was very interested to continue to ask. This can be used to feed animals or used as a fertilizer for plants. The effect is quite good, the senior said, a little lack of confidence. Ryan felt that this adventure was even lower, and the lute he played for a long time was Jingila. Chapter 163. Depressing status quo. Ryan was initially dissatisfied with these trophies, but then he was relieved to think about it. It's like getting $5 and a can of Coke in a 5-star hotel to sell you $30. At least these things are produced by the Emerald Dream, which sounds very full anyway. At this time, the seniors who led the way also felt that this thing was a bit unmanageable, so they mentioned, this thing actually has a better use. The couple are in school like this very much. If you send them a little, they will be very good. Don't bother you for a long time. If you give it a little more at a stretch, they might even give you a strange gift found in the forest outside the school. Occasionally there will be something more precious or strange. This sounds much better. Dagui gets a chance to draw, although it sounds like a strong taste of domestic mobile games. Ryan and the seniors soon separated because Ryan had mastered all the knowledge needed to hunt here. When two people act together, the efficiency is too low. After saying goodbye to the seniors, Ryan can finally slowly try the power of the new Alpha. After he had harvested a bag of blood beads, he finally figured out why Lifa was lost on Uncle Ju's side. Lifa is indeed powerful, and it can even be said that it is stronger than the life magic and natural magic he mastered before in battle. The problem is that the power of Lifa is exchanged for high energy consumption. If in a world with a good magical environment, such as the world of Harry Potter, releasing Lifa can use the power of the world, so it is still a consumption for users. Acceptable. However, if it is the end of the Age of the Last Law, the launch of the spell is purely powered by the user himself, which is equivalent to making a thunder spell repair backward once. It is also inevitable that such things will not spread. Not to mention that Lifa has one thing that is righteousness in heaven and earth. What it shows is that if the user injects merit during the spellcasting, Lifa's power will double and the enemy can be distinguished. For example, just now Ryan injected merit when he released the Quartet Wind Thunder. As a result, this magic similar to the thunderstorm Nova swept away the surrounding shadow of death. The attack range has been increased by 50%, not to mention that even the grass and trees in the attack range have not been hurt. You have to know that when you just released Lifa, you will accidentally hurt some plants. Fortunately, the amount of lightning is considered to be a part of natural forces. So Ryan was not kicked out after causing collateral damage to the Emerald Dream. Merit is extremely important in Lifa, but like the world of Uncle Ju, merit is not enough for self-cultivation, and it cannot be directly used as a disposable consumable. After all, Unlike Ryan, who saved several worlds at the same time, they had enough merits to squander. Not to mention that if Lufar wants to improve his level, the merits consumed during cultivation are also higher than other methods. Leafa can be recognized as the first attack of all methods, so it is reasonable to pay more. After cleaning up the shadows of death within his own range, because of the novice, the range assigned to Ryan is relatively small. Watching others can't finish it for a while, he found a tree and sat up. While using electrostatic induction to monitor the surroundings, he began to think about the power he possessed. Let us say that Ryan now also has a lot of power. The Nordic wizard life magic inherited from Iceland, the natural magic obtained in the Emerald Dream, the thunder and Taoism obtained by Uncle Nine, in addition to some other miscellaneous things and battle-related heritage. At least these important powers are inherited. Anyone who strives to cultivate more than Dumbledore and Voldemort is not a dream. In a certain way, Ryan is lucky. While other hemp wizards are struggling to find a way to continue to rise, Ryan has now mastered 4 roads pointing directly to the peak of the magic world. Especially the complete true knowledge and the Nordic magic inheritance, Ryan felt that it might even be better than the collection of some pureblood families. With this cornerstone, it can be said that the mysterious world of magic opened the door in front of him. The reason why Dumbledore and Voldemort are so powerful is because they can slowly study the essence of magic through the runes and continue to develop on the magic of predecessors. It's just that for Ryan, the biggest problem now is the serious shortage of time and accumulation. A path that leads straight to the peak does not mean that you have reached the peak. The practice of these things requires a lot of time and energy to complete. Even genius wizards like Voldemort have adopted a series of methods that can lead to unstable foundations and rapidly improve magic. It will take decades to study to achieve this level. It was only 2 years since Ryan was full of mathematics, and he practiced life magic, natural magic, and Taoism, which are known for their solid foundation and unsatisfactory progress. Of course, these methods of practice are very friendly to Ryan, who needs to explore on his own most of the time. Even if there is an error, there will not be any major problems. However, this also led to Ryan having a lot of resources and excellent exercises. The overall level is now equivalent to the average level of Hogwarts graduates. Of course, this refers to the average level. It may be that the fighting level is higher www.mplnovel.com and the other levels are lower. It is precisely because of this confidence that Ryan is willing to make a reading meeting with Hermione. After all, the biggest difference between the magic world and the Muggle world is that personal strength sometimes plays a final role. For example, after the resurrection of the 4th grade Voldemort, their organization has remained underground. Both Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic are operating normally. But as soon as Dumbledore died in 6th grade, the Ministry of Magic immediately fell, and Hogwarts also entered the age of Voldemort's control. And when Voldemort died in the hands of Harry Potter in the final battle, the Death Eaters did the birds and beasts scattered. Even at that time they still possessed professional armed force strikers in magic and wizarding circles. Although Ryan's current strength can be described as weak, it should belong to the most powerful part in the 3rd grade. Although this kind of punching Nanshan nursing home, kicking the record of Behi Kindergarten is nothing to show off. It is precisely because of this strength that Ryan is confident that the book club will function normally. If you are not strong enough, it can only be the same as Hermione's vomiting. Even if you want to change the ambitious ambition of the magic world, the closest friends will scoff. Lane was thinking of these things in the tree. A green spark exploded in the sky in the distance. This means that the entire tanking has been cleaned up, and the leader calls everyone to gather at the entrance of the tanking. So Ryan hurried down the tree and ran to the entrance of the tanking. Chapter 164, Extracurricular Activities. Probably because Lane arranged for the area closest to the entrance and exit, Lane arrived at the meeting point as early as possible. Since this tanking is not big, everyone has been there in a few minutes. After counting the number of people, the leader took everyone back to the school. After arriving at the school to confirm the safety, everyone released their body and nature's pet status. Ryan felt that as soon as he disengaged, a sense of fatigue swept from head to toe. But it is not just that he has this problem alone. Looking around the classmates, everyone seems to be in a state of depression. Some people even feel about to fall. Okay, I'm here today. Let's go back to rest now. With the leader's last sentence, everyone turned into green light and exited the Emerald Dream. Opening his eyes from the bed, Ryan felt a little embarrassed when he saw Xiao King's languishing wrapped around his arm. After all, this kind of tiredness needs to be shared by the owner and the pet. According to Xiao King's request to send it back to the world of Plants vs. Zombies, and allow it to eat in his warehouse where the crystals of sunlight are stored, Ryan also began to meditate in bed to recover energy. Early the next morning, Ryan, who had completely recovered through meditation, went to a broom room on the 2nd floor of Castro Brusso after breakfast, where the Coppola's site was located. Of course, because this is Coppola's place, no one usually comes here. But when he was walking in the hallway, Ryan felt that there were some eyes around him. But when he went to look carefully for those eyes, he saw nothing. Stood in the corridor and looked around. Ryan was surprised to find that the Coppolas cleaned up their settlements and dens very cleanly, not as messy as he had imagined. It can even be said that the cleanliness here is cleaner than in the corridors where people travel. It seems that they just like to make trouble, but in fact they also like clean guys. Reached the end of the corridor and opened the door of the broom. Ryan placed the blood beads on a clean-looking cabinet in the broom, following the instructions of the senior, and then exited the broom to close the door. As soon as the door closed, Ryan heard a rustling voice inside. According to the senior's instructions, Ryan could only wait quietly at the door according to his curiosity. Until 5 or 6 minutes later, the sound inside slowly quieted down. Lane opened the door again and entered the room. The blood beads on the cabinet have completely disappeared, and it seems that they have been taken away by the cupolas. But Cupola also left something on the cabinet. Let me see what this is. 2 fresh trees, a piece of ore that can't see anything, but it can be felt that this stone is a magic material, a dried snake gall. And finally this is a transparency A/size crystal, Lane said to himself. It looks okay, it should not be considered non-chief. But besides this adventure in the Emerald Dream, there will be some boredom in the days to come. It's just that class is going to be as usual day after day. Fortunately, after the previous run-in, the exchange students at Hogwarts began to slowly adapt to Castro's teaching habits. Because everyone is a top student, not only can they keep up with the progress of teaching, but they can also learn the courses of this year's Hogwarts. Is another Friday. This is already the 2nd month of exchange study. More than a month of high-intensity learning also makes people feel tired. So on the afternoon of that day, Ryan did not write homework as usual after returning to the car after class, but leaned directly on the chair and played with a pistol. This pistol was the Liberator pistol that Desdemona gave him. Because of its small size, exquisite power and good power, Ryan took it out from time to time to maintain it. However, the last time Desdemona sent him the gun, he also reminded him that as the Federation slowly recovered, many synthetics were rejected by others after exposing their identities, especially those who lived under the status of natural persons and adult. They have been greatly rejected in various human positions. No way, they can only live in the neighborhood of the wise ghouls, but this is only a stopgap measure. After all, the two races with completely different needs can be together for a short time, and there will be contradictions for a long time. Although under the suppression of Ryan, there is no policy of discrimination. But there has always been discrimination against synthetic people in private. Desdemona knows that Ryan has the ability that no one else has, so she hopes she can find a good way. During this time, Ryan often took out the gun for maintenance while thinking about how to solve this problem. In the maintenance process, Ryan found it very useful to clean up a new spell, so that you can skip the most troublesome process of wiping out the old gun oil. It seems that some housework spells also need to be learned a little, which can save a lot of time and energy in daily life. Just after Ryan cleaned up and took a pistol to make a shooting posture, there was a knock at the door. Ryan quickly put the gun back in the Wanji grocery store and opened the door to find Hermione holding her Hermes station. At the door, Professor Sprout informed us to go to the common room together. Hermione stood at the door and notified. It's 8:30 in the evening now. What will happen then? Tomorrow is the weekend. I hope nothing will happen. And Professor Yu reading www.yuukanzu.com should not arrange a lot of tasks. Fortunately, what needs to be notified is not that there is a task tomorrow, but that everyone can go to the collective purchase to relax tomorrow. So today the professor informed everyone in advance and warned everyone of some things to pay attention. As we all know, no matter which wizard school is a rare gathering place of wizards in the magic world. In this case, there will naturally be wizards' residences and commercial areas, such as the town of Hogsmeade near Hogwarts. Similarly, there is also a commercial center called Mahogany Town near Castro Brusio. After all, this is the Amazon rainforest. Even for wizards, many places are particularly dangerous and inconvenient. In this case, people tend to gather together rather than live separately. At the same time, because of the rich resources here attracting a large number of wizards who come to the gold rush, the size and prosperity of Mahogany Town is also higher than Hogsmeade. And today, the professor mainly came to count who is going to purchase tomorrow to facilitate the school to arrange transportation. However, unlike Hogwarts, there is no age limit for visiting Mahogany Town. So when you go into the countryside, the 3 sophomores are also eligible to go there. Because everyone is interested in Mahogany Town, Professor Sprout asked everyone to take a break after telling the precautions for the sunrise. After returning to the carriage, Hermione excitedly took out a book introducing the magical world of South America and began to arrange tomorrow's itinerary. Ryan could only shrug helplessly for her nerdy practice, and then went back to his dormitory to go to bed quickly so as not to lose energy tomorrow. Chapter 165, Druid and Arcanist. Early the next morning, as soon as Ryan went out after washing, she saw Hermione next door yawning out of the room with dark circles. Seeing Ryan watching her, Hermione turned around and said, "Yesterday I learned that I was going to Mahogany Town, so I kept looking for information about it at night. As a result, I didn't expect so much about Mahogany Town. I accidentally made it very late before going to sleep. It's too much to convince you. You can tire yourself like this when you are relaxing on vacation. Ryan said he couldn't understand Hermione's mentality of learning God. Because Mahogany Town is a very important place, South American magic makes many important things happen here. For example, the phantom that exists on the Crocodile Pyramid day after day, and the meeting place of the establishment of the Brazilian Ministry of Magic in the 18th century. In short, it can be said that the town has a history of modern magic in South America. Traveling to such an important place, if you don't prepare in advance, wouldn't it be a waste of an opportunity to learn about it? So this makes you a panda? Ryan said jokingly, and gestured with his hand on the side of his eyes. Obviously Hermione knew about pandas. After all, in the fall of her school year, a giant panda named Ming Ming settled in the London Zoo. Her Christmas fake Hermione also visited the panda at the London Zoo. So as soon as Ryan gestured to Hermione, she knew Ryan was talking about her dark circles. Is my dark circle so obvious? Hermione asked nervously. Even though there may be some margins in peacetime, Hermione still hopes not to look too bad in this kind of collective activity. Especially after entering puberty, she appears more sensitive than before. It's quite obvious. Lane saw Hermione's expression collapse, so she added a sentence. But I have a way to solve this problem now. After speaking, Ryan pulled out her wand and pointed at Hermione's face, saying, Nature comforts. With Ryan's spell, a pure force of nature slowly poured into Hermione's body. After waking up, I naturally woke up. The fatigue on my body and the soreness of my eyes swept away. After the magic, Hermione took out the small mirror she carried with her and looked at it. She found that the dark circles on her face and the blood on her eyes had disappeared. She looked at Ryan with surprise. Stop. This magic will definitely not teach you. I know you definitely want to use this magic to learn later in the night. But even magic can only temporarily use it to temporarily restore fatigue, and it cannot replace rest. Not to mention this magic you certainly not. Well, I really want to learn this. But why do you say I can't learn? Hermione asked curiously. It's very simple. How did you learn the meditation idea I taught you last Saturday? Practice. Except for a little better sleep after meditation, it's useless. Hermione replied. That's why I said you can't learn. The magic just needed the power of nature. I taught you that meditation, which is how to get started with natural forces. You haven't been able to communicate with nature for so long. It means that you are really not talented on this path. You must know that a lot of things in the magical world are based on talents. It is no use relying on hard practice alone, Ryan said with a shrug. It's a pity. Hermione looked a little frustrated, but she soon got excited. But I learned all the runes you taught me last time, and I have even begun to modify the magic. After speaking, Hermione took out her wand and pronounced the mantra. Fluorescent light flashes. I saw her head showing a little white light, then slowly turned into red. Afterwards she said a little embarrassedly, now it can only be turned into red, and it consumes more than 3 times the magic. Huh? You learned much faster than I thought, and you can actually modify the spells yourself, Ryan said with some surprise. After discussing the establishment of a book club with Hermione last time, Ryan took the Rune Foundation and Nature Meditation taught Hermione. When teaching knowledge at the time, on the one hand, Ryan wanted to raise Hermione's level a little bit. After all, improving a friend's ability also means indirectly increasing his own strength. On the other hand, Ryan has too much power in his hands, and he can't finish the existing ones at all, so he has no energy to innovate. After all, for him, he can thoroughly learn the things in the heritage. Almost all of his energy has been occupied. In this case, he has always planned to give some of his knowledge to reliable people to see if he can research something new. After the last discussion, Ryan confirmed that Hermione, who had a good personal relationship and shared a common idea, was reliable. So she handed over part of the inheritance of nature and part of the runes of the Nordic wizards to her. Unexpectedly, she made breakthrough progress in rune research so quickly. It seems that Hermione doesn't have a cold for natural forces at all, but she looks very talented for pure brain-burning things like runes. This shows that she is a natural arcanist and not a druid. Now I can change some little magic spells at most, but it is not as good as the original spells after the change. I don't know what the significance of this change is. Hermione took the opportunity to speak out the confusion that had plagued him for a long time. How could this be meaningless? And it can even be said that this is one of the strong foundations of those pure-blood families. All the common spells on the market are indeed hard-working by the previous people, but the price of the increase in versatility is that these magics are difficult for the wizards. Handy to use. www.mplnovel.com. A powerful wizard will inevitably transform his own magic based on these ordinary magics. For example, the fire mantra is basically everyone. But Dumbledore can use the improved version of the flame spell he has researched to defeat those dark wizards while fighting dangerous black wizards. It turned out like this. Thank you. I now seem to vaguely know what kind of road I'm going to take. Hermione smiled at Ryan afterwards, and the whole person seemed a lot easier. Looked at Hermione's smile, Maybe it's been a long time since she met. Ryan felt suddenly whether it was brown hair with shaggy hair or thick eyebrows that had never been trimmed. Even the rabbit teeth in his mouth and the small face that just opened after entering puberty made Ryan look cute. Lying in the trough, Ryan suddenly felt cold behind. Is it because of being single for a long time? Not at all. Thinking of this, Ryan immediately admonished herself. The girl in front of you is now just a child, and you and she are pure friendship. Teach her so much knowledge just for the help of like-minded partners. Yes, that's how it is. Thinking of this, Ryan calmed down. But of course Hermione didn't know what Ryan was thinking at this time. She raised her arm and looked at her watch and said in surprise, "Oh my god, it's almost 7:30. We must hurry to the auditorium for dinner. After all, we have to go to Tauhua today." What about Xinmu Town? Having finished, Ryan was taken by Hermione to dinner. Chapter 166, Mahogany Town. After breakfast, all the exchange students at Hogwarts put on their daily clothes and were led by the professor to the small pier on the Highland River where Castro Brusio was. Except for a few pureblood wizards who still wear wizard robes for their own pride, other little wizards changed into mill clothes. After all, there is no magic outside the school to regulate the temperature and humidity, so wearing such a robe in the tropical rainforest is not an easy task. Of course, it may be that those pureblood have magic to prevent themselves from heat stroke, but from their sweaty appearance, it does not look like magic to regulate the temperature. Ryan was really worried that they would fall directly to the ground because of heat stroke. After all, even if his body had been strengthened, he still feels very hot just wearing t-shirts and jeans. It is estimated that if he changes his robe, Ryan feels that he may be directly heat stroke. Soon Ryan turned his attention away from his clothes, because the boat to Mahogany Town was ready. Mahogany Town is downstream of the river. After all, it is the center of the Amazon rainforest. For the purpose of reducing the pressure on the flyway network, there is no magic transmission from Castro Brusio to Mahogany Town. But because both locations are by the river, the natural boat has become a means of transportation between the school and the town. What is now displayed in front of Lane is a huge canoe. This canoe looks like a tree with a diameter of about 6 meters is cut in half from the middle and hollowed out, and there is a sunshade roof woven with leaves. However, it is obvious that this boat is not as simple as it seems. Under the impact of the river water, 1 or 2 runes can be seen flashing from time to time. Ryan was originally worried that his dress would be a little too homely and not very decent today, but after seeing the Castro Brusio students on board, he found his worries to be unnecessary. Because local students were more unrestrained. For example, David only wore a short-sleeved flower shirt on his upper body and a pair of beach pants underneath. His cousin was wearing short navel sleeves and denim shorts. There are even a few native little witches who seem to be indigenous. They only have a circle of cloth around their waists, the upper body is bare, and only a necklace is hung around the neck. The clothes you wear are a little too thick. Seeing Lane, David said happily after saying hello. There are magic and special magic plants around the town of Mahogany. The poisonous insects in the forest can't get in at all, so there is no need to wrap yourself so tightly. I'm just worried that it's too casual to wear and it wouldn't look polite. Ryan quickly explained. You British are really weird. It's time to relax. It's weird to be so formal. David pointed to the pureblood wizards who were wearing wizard robes. This Ryan can only shrug helplessly, because he has nothing to say to those pureblood wizards who want to face and suffer. Soon after a shock, the canoe left the dock and sailed downstream along the turbulent stream of the river. Because this place is inaccessible, the river maintains its original appearance, and there are many obstacles in the middle of the river. But canoes can always bypass them under the influence of magic. Even if some debris hits the boat gang occasionally, the magic on the boat can easily bounce off those things and prevent them from hurting the hull. Therefore, there was no danger on the way, and as the canoe slowed down, everyone successfully reached the destination. Is called Mahogany Town because there are a lot of mahogany trees in and around the town. The buildings in the town, whether of local temple style or European style, are all dotted in the middle of these tall trees. Although the styles of the houses are not uniform, the buildings embedded in the woods show the whole town a special sense of harmony. Under the influence of magic, this town, like Hogsmeade, is not shown on any known maps. Even satellite shooting can only shoot a primitive jungle. Of course these things have nothing to do with Ryan. He is now standing in front of a food stand waiting for the boss to make ice cream for him. As soon as he arrived in town, Professor Sprout announced the meeting at the dock at 4 in the afternoon. After that, everyone went to free activities. Because she was not familiar with the town, Ryan chose to follow Hermione, who had done her homework in advance. After watching 2 or 3 important historical sites, Ryan and they found that this history that happened on the other side of the earth could not arouse their interest at all. So after thinking about it for a while, I chose to give up the plan to visit other ruins. So there was a lot of time, and Hermione took this opportunity to start asking Ryan some questions about the runes. Ryan answered the questions while looking for places in the town where there were many people. They walked and walked quickly and they came to the town's business district. Such a place with a large flow of people, as long as there is no explicit prohibition, There will definitely be countless food stalls taking advantage of the opportunity of many people to do business. The mole world looks like this, and the wizard world is no exception. Just because the question and answer just made Ryan feel a little dry behind his mouth. www.mtlnovel.com. So they immediately chose a food stall to buy an ice cream to moisturize their throat. This street is full of colorful food stalls, which attracted a group of British wizards who came out of the desert. For example, Ryan saw several seniors sitting in front of a stall. Even the little wizard was attracted to the food. Ryan saw Professor Kettleborn sitting on the street, eating barbecue and cold beer. After discovering Ryan and Hermione, they greeted them happily. Walking along several commercial streets and discussing issues, it is natural to taste special dishes. Ryan suddenly discovered that Hermione seemed very interested in sweets. So he asked a little curiously, "How come I didn't find you like sweets so much?" Hermione, who was scooping a red jelly floating in the air with a spoon, paused. "You know my parents are dentists. They are more against me eating sweets, but these magic desserts are all natural low sugar and will not damage teeth." Sounds reasonable. While Ryan thought, he put a deep-fried golden thing in his mouth and didn't know what was wrapped in it. After chewing, his eyes widened. "Why is the worm still alive after this dessert wrapper is fried?" Fortunately, after chewing a few more times, Ryan felt that the taste of the insects was not bad. After all, it didn't spoil the food. But be sure to ask before buying snacks next time. After all, I still have to eat at noon. So Ryan stopped Hermione, who was eager to try other desserts on the street, and walked to the bookstore that was expected in advance. Chapter 167, Strange Store. Arriving at the door of the largest bookstore in Mahogany Town, Ryan and they discovered that because today is the school's student procurement day, the bookstore took advantage of this opportunity to invite several famous writers to solicit guests, and the entire bookstore was brought here by wizards. They are stuffed up, and it seems likely that they can't even squeeze in. Since this is the case, the bookstore can only regretfully crossed out from the travel destination. After all, it's really unsuitable to read a book like this. Since such a big bookstore doesn't work, Ryan immediately thought of going to a second-hand bookstore to Taobao. As a place where books are as expensive as Britain, there are naturally not too few second-hand bookstores. However, because the profits for second-hand books are not high, bookstores will certainly not be located on this bustling commercial street. After all, the profits may not even be able to pay the rent. You said to sell other things in the name of second-hand books? Well, things that need to be sold under other names are really not suitable for being put on the streets where people come and go. Because I'm worried about going to the back alleys, especially the description of the law and order in South America in the previous Life News is not very good. So Ryan found an excuse to put something in her pocket outside of Hermione's line of sight before continuing their journey. After asking several people, he turned a few circles on the street. Ryan and Hermione finally found a second-hand bookstore on a small road. This store looks a bit like the Oliver Wand store in Diagon Alley. The facade is very small, but it gives a mysterious feeling. Piles of books were placed in the grey window. There is a metal signboard with sapphire oxidation on the window, which reads the small shop in skulls in Spanish. Pushed the door open, and Ryan discovered that the door of this small shop was not big, but the space inside was not small. Various goods packed the rows of shelves. After probably scanning the things on the shelf, Lane discovered that this was not a mere old bookstore, but a large second-hand store. A series of feathers of various colors, old ones with various scratches, strange stone carvings, various herbs, Lane vowed as a plant proficiency, most of which are fake, exude colorful props and magic book. These things are stacked on the shelf layer by layer. With the exception of the simplest sorting, the whole store looks like a large garbage collection bin. Walk around a little more, can't see what the original specimen was, and crossed a broom with only sticks. Ryan saw the shop owner, an old man with white hair who looked more than 70 years old. He was wearing a black wizard robe sitting behind the counter and dozing off. After seeing Ryan and the two of them standing in front of him, he just waved weakly and said, "Every shelf has a price. After choosing something, just check it out with me. Remember, once you take it off the shelf, you must buy it. There is magic monitoring in the store. Don't think about getting through it." Lane returned to the shelves and took a closer look, only to find that the prices on these shelves ranged from 1 xyc to 10 gallons. After browsing a few shelves, Ryan came to the conclusion that the owner of this shop was a black-hearted businessman, because he really couldn't see why the pile of tatters dared to set such a high price. The most important thing is that there are runes on each shelf to shield the magic perception, which allows you to reach into the shelf to look at those things, but only when you take them out, you can know what these things are. No wonder the shop the goods required to be taken off the shelf must be bought. Watching Hermione flip through some of the shelf textbooks of Harmonia and Castro Bruce, Lane walked quietly to the side to investigate the goods on the other shelves. Although the magic of concealment and isolation is released on each shelf by magic means, it does not mean that the magic is foolproof. When Ryan began to perceive the goods on the shelf using Taoist perception, he found that he could vaguely feel the magical energy contained in some things. It's no wonder, after all, Taoism is an extraordinary power of a completely different system. It is likely that the boss did not think of this kind of thing when setting up magic, so some loopholes caught by Lane were also expected. In Taoist perception, Ryan only discovered that the owner of this shop was darker than he thought. For example, something called wood essence. This kind of thing has a non-magic version of subspecies, called American ginseng, which was introduced in Castro Brusio's potion class, because of its vitality-reinforcing effect and low yield, so the price is expensive. Lane saw a complete wood essence on a shelf with a price of 10 gallons on one shelf. This price is much lower than the market price. However, in the perception of Taoism, the wood essence placed on the shelf actually has only the outermost layer of skin, which is filled with another kind of rhizome that does not know what plant it is. Seriously, it is estimated that many people will still be fooled by such an exquisite degree of fraud even without these magic barriers. However, although this shop has a lot of fakes, it does not mean that there are no good things. After all, this store seems to have been operating in this place for a long time, and the magic world has a small number of people. If there were only fakes, this store would have been smashed. For example, Ryan found an arm-sized Millennium Lightning wood in a pile of one piece of garbage. www.mplnovel.com. The only regret is that the mahogany tree is not the mahogany, but for Ryan, do it. The sword is enough, depending on the size of the wood. Besides making a sword, it is enough to make a set of signs. In addition to this, Ryan also randomly selected some magical ores to prepare to go back to see what is the use. When he took a pile of things to the counter to check out, he accidentally found a black leather notebook under the boss's counter. The cover of the notebook reflected the sunlight outside the window, and Ryan could see a triangle, a circle, and the vertical symbol looks like a triangular eye. Ryan's movement paused, because he recognized that the symbol on the book represented the Saints of Grindelwald. Think again about the age of the shop owner and the name of the German shop named Skolzner. Ryan felt that the shop owner was probably one of the saints. Thinking about this, Ryan felt that she was almost sweating down. After all, the shadow of people's famous trees. Unlike Voldemort's hordes of Death Eaters, Grindelwald's saint organization is much higher than Death Eaters. Once the shopkeeper knew what would happen if he discovered his secret, Ryan now only wanted to call Hermione to leave the shop. But sometimes I was afraid of coming. The shop owner suddenly smiled at him after reading what Ryan had brought out, and then said, "Boy, your eyesight looks good. Would you like to take a look at the warehouse behind me?" "Good thing." Chapter 168, Ex-Saint. When the owner invited Ryan's instinctive first reaction was to run straight, because he thinks it is probably because the owner now knows that he has discovered the owner's secret, so the owner wants to seal it. But think about yourself not coming alone, in case it is too bad because you are involved in innocent. Not to mention that the store seems to have been open for decades, and the ghost knows if the store owner has placed any organ traps or something in it. Turning around this way is equivalent to tearing his face directly. Ryan doesn't think he can run over the owner of a saint's site. So Ryan nodded and extended a hand, saying, "Mr. Owner, I am very interested in the things in your warehouse. Please lead the way ahead." The two people bypassed several rows of shelves one after the other and exited the shop through the back door. Through the courtyard, the shopkeeper opened the warehouse door. There was no magic in the storehouse, and as soon as the door opened, Ryan could feel that the contents were all good things of great value. "I think too much. Is it really just the owner who sees my eyesight better and wants to bring some juniors?" Ryan just started thinking about what the shopkeeper wanted to do, and suddenly felt a cold wind blowing behind him. Ryan flashed aside, and a green wooden thorn with a lightly scented chopstick brushed over Ryan's face. Lane's complexion changed greatly, and he shouted with a gesture in his right hand, "Sifang Feng Gulai." With a spell, the thunder and lightning scattered around with Ryan as the center. But it was useless. The shopkeeper in front of the station suddenly disappeared like a soap bubble. Phantom. Lane had a bad heart and immediately shattered a jade rune that had just been taken out of the waste space bag. Wind thunder protection. A large ball of plasma exploded from Ryan and attacked every corner. Now it's not clear where the other party is. Facing the wizard Ryan, who is good at using illusion magic, can only use this range of spells to try. As the plasma flew in all directions, Ryan finally felt through the magic of life that the shopkeeper's figure appeared in the corner of the courtyard, but he was also felt by Ryan when he found him. The shopkeeper showed a serious expression and suddenly disappeared from the corner of the courtyard. Then he almost appeared in the defense circle built by Ryan with lightning. Just as he thought the victory was in the grip, Ryan yanked out the previously prepared Clinvy's teeth and poked it toward his waist. It's really worthy of the magic weapon that was piled up by human life in the radiation world with basically no magic. Clinwy's teeth went straight, even if the silver protective cover was ejected 3 times from the owner's body in a flash, but Clinwy's teeth pierced easily like a layer of paper. The smile on the shopkeeper's original face was completely gone with the disappearance of the protective cover, but the shopkeeper also seemed to have fought through the battle. twisting his waist before the knife stabbed him to avoid the point. Then he appeared at the door of the warehouse with his waist covered. It was really dangerous just now, because most wizards are not very good at melee, so many self-defense spells like armor are aimed at physical attacks. Most wizards who are good at fighting will use some magic, such as short-range teleportation or protection, to protect themselves. Theoretically, it is not impossible to kill a wizard in close combat if the protection of the wizard and the means of running the road can be knocked out. For example, when the witch hunt activity peaked, many of the current spells were not invented. There are really many wizards who are even killed by farmers with dung forks. It's just that as time goes to modern times, the invention of various new magic makes it difficult to kill a wizard who is good at fighting. Naturally, the wizard who is good at fighting does not include the guy in the British Ministry of Magic who can't even put out the iron armor curse. But in such a peaceful time now, there are many such wizards. Obviously, Ryan was regarded as such a rookie by the owner, especially when Ryan started with a very aggressive Ulfa. The old man of the shopkeeper mistakenly thought that Ryan was an idiot wizard who was only good at standing pile output, so he planned to give Ryan a close look. In fact, under normal circumstances, the owner's idea is not wrong. After all, for a very young person like Ryan, he can basically be equated with the lack of combat experience. Not to mention that it takes a lot of energy to study and use magic. Ryan's age does not look like a person who has enough time to skillfully use all kinds of magic, especially after Ryan used the surprising attack magic of this age. The shop owner thought that Ryan was only proficient in a certain type of attack magic, and it was basically nothing in defense and melee. Not to mention the shop owner's confidence in the magical defenses of his own body. Under such negligent circumstances, the shop owner approached Ryan unpreparedly. As a result, Ryan took out a powerful magic weapon and slashed it to the point without even using his magic, even if the shop owner dodged a bit. Finally, he made a big cut on his waist. Ryan can now even see the shopkeeper's hand covering the wound, oozing out a drop of black blood in the fingers. Knowing that Clinwy's teeth have strong poison and blood loss properties, so the wizard of the shopkeeper's age was scratched. A big wound can't last much time. www.mplnovel.com. Just now the owner is a phantom and a sneak attack, so now Ryan's look at this is to kill people and kill people. After all, if he had just lost his hand, there might be more than one person dying. Ryan didn't believe that in this case, he could still let his companions go. Clinwy's teeth are very different from the magic props in the Harry Potter world. It took Ryan several days after getting the knife to develop a way to mix life and natural magic to eliminate the side effects of the knife. After all, this knife looks a bit unconventional. At that time, Ryan worried that he would scratch himself, so he studied in advance how to remove the effect of the knife. For the current owner, it is difficult for him to quickly analyze how to solve his problems while an opponent is still watching. Of course, for top wizards, this kind of problem can easily be solved directly, but the one in front of him is not the top wizard in any way. Taking advantage of his illness, Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to release his attack magic to the shopkeeper while moving his position, and the shopkeeper managed to maintain protection. However, in this case, he naturally reduced the suppression of toxins, and soon the whole person was crumbling. After discovering this situation, Ryan took out a jade symbol used to press the bottom of the box to prepare for the final blow. This jade charm is a lightning strike technique infused with a lot of merit, and it is also the strongest attack method that Ryan masters at this stage. As he was about to arouse the power in the jade rune, a familiar voice came from nearby. "Stop it, yourself, this is just a misunderstanding." Chapter 169, Past. Ryan looked up at the place where the sound was made, and was surprised to find that it was Fernando, the principal of Castro's Blue Magic, who hurried on a broom. Watching Flight to the yard and greet Ryan hurriedly, he immediately walked to the headmaster of the shopkeeper. "Fernando," Ryan asked in surprise, "what did you just say about yourself? Misunderstanding?" "He brought me here after I was raided directly by him, and now you say this is a misunderstanding. What is going on?" At this time, after applying some herbs to the wound, Principal Fernando began to treat the owner's wound with a wand, and Ryan could feel the deep natural force released. Soon, the wound in the shopkeeper's waist slowly healed. Principal Fernando stood up and just wanted to answer this question. The shopkeeper next to him stopped him and said, "Let me answer this question. Just now my attack on you was a test. The wooden thorn is just a normal sleeping pill." Test? It was said that Ryan suddenly thought that the shopkeeper had just given up the opportunity to attack several times. At the time, he thought that the shopkeeper could not keep up with the action because he was older, but this came to a battle-hardened warrior. It's a bit unreasonable. But now such an explanation is much more reasonable. "Yes, it's the test. But I didn't expect you to react so much, and still have such a dangerous magic weapon in your hand." "I have to admit that I am old and careless," the shopkeeper said weakly. "But I just want to know one thing. Your reaction is completely beyond the normal range. Can 35XS tell me why?" "Well, because I saw the Saints logo on your notebook, I suspect you were trying to kill me," Ryan replied helplessly. There are not many young people who still know about the Saints." "Yes, I was a saint when I was young, But you seem to have misunderstood a place. The saints do not need to hide themselves, at least saints do not need this place. What? The information I checked is that after the failure of Grindelwald, the saints also disappeared, so I always thought it was because of being chased that it was incognito. Lane said in surprise. At this time, the old man, the owner, was almost recovered. He helped Principal Fernando slowly stand up, tried his best to straighten his chest, and then lowered his head to look at Ryan and said, "Can you tell me before you answer this question? What kind of person is Grindelwald?" Ryan thought it might be important for the shopkeeper to ask this question, so he had all the information about Grindelwald in his mind for 2 lifetimes. Then he said, "I think Grindelwald's starting point is correct. When the development of the magic world can't keep up with the development of the Mole world, if you do nothing, you just wait and die." From a historical perspective, after the outbreak of the First Industrial Revolution, the world of ordinary people has entered a period of rapid development. This development has achieved achievements far exceeding those of the previous tens of centuries in just 100 years. Watson was born in such an era, and it is obvious to see these. In this context of 35XS, I believe that his original heart should not be for personal interests, but for the future of the entire magic world. In addition to the excessively strict international secrecy law system at that time, many wizards were strongly dissatisfied. When Grindelwald first announced that it was going to break the shackles of the secrecy law, it was very supported by a group of wizards. But I think that the method he chose to solve the problem was wrong at first. He thought that instigating the wizards and the Mole full-scale war can get the first move without the Moles fully developing, and use the war to hinder the development of the Mole world. Finally, let the wizard come out and rule the Mole once and for all. Solving the problem once and for all, to put it bluntly, is to choose not to follow the development when the opponent develops rapidly, but to choose to kill all development possibilities. In his actions to achieve this goal, he was filled with eager for quick success. In order to induce the war to stir up the flames, kill the wizards who did not support him, and tried to cause a massacre in Paris. This situation naturally triggered the resistance of the wizards. When the World War broke out in the Mole world, the Wizarding world was also in the World War. Fortunately, in the end Dumbledore stopped Grindelwald, so that the wizards did not go extinct because of the internal war before Mole found himself. After synthesizing the large amount of information seen in his previous life, Lane was in this form. The saint expressed his view of Grindelwald in front of him. But when looking at the shopkeeper's complexion, Ryan added, "But I think what Grindelwald did is not useless. After all, it was precisely because of what Grindelwald did that forced the magic world to revise the secrecy laws and cancel those harsh regulations, so today's magic world can absorb new blood to let magic the world is alive." I'm surprised that you know so much about Grindelwald, especially for your age. I can't hope for better. But I have something here that you don't know. Do you want to listen to an old man's chatter now? After listening to Ryan's summary, the shopkeeper said. Ryan nodded excitedly. After all, there was not much chance for him to learn the secrets of the magic world. The owner saw Ryan's excited expression and cleared his throat. "I, Frank Kirsner, the second generation of saints. My father was the first wizard who followed Grindelwald, and later became a few saints. Commander of one of the elite operations teams. Even when I was born in 1925, it was the baptism that Grindel hosted for me. When Grindelwald tried to destroy the city of Paris in 26, my father was at the scene. I clearly saw Grindelwald's vision of predicting World War II for them, because a conflict broke out with Era. So I entered open the stage of violent conflict. But as you said just now, Grindelwald's policies provoke a strong resistance. When I joined the Saints as an adult in 1942, www.mtlnovel.com, we have completely fallen into decline. Brook, Volgograd, Usk, Palermo, Rome, Cherbourg, Paris, Bastogne. I experienced every major battle of Saints in the late period. But we have fewer and fewer opponents, but more and more came. The initial excitement also transformed into a lot of exhaustion and helplessness. The most important thing is that our leader Grindelwald also discovered the biggest loophole in his plan. Mole not only did not stop development in this total war, but accelerated the development. And his war in the magic world was further weakening the power of the wizards. According to my father's memory, Grindelwald was no longer the passionate leader since 44. He just did something routinely. I chose to duel with Dumbledore in 45 years because he had discovered that his dream would never be realized at that time, so he hoped to stop the sorcerer from bleeding through the duel. At the same time, for the remaining loyal saint, we found a way out. After the duel, Grindelwald chose to shut himself down in Newmungard. Most of the saints were pardoned, and many joined the post-war European and American Ministry of Magic. My father and I and some of them were in the war. The saints who killed too much chose to go into exile and vowed never to return home. Speaking of this, the shopkeeper glanced at Ryan and then said, "Don't look at me with that kind of look. I swear that we are only killing in battle, and we have never had any record of attacking non-combatants. Otherwise, the Ministry of Magic after the war will not let us go. But this time, we tested you, and we did have some relationship with those former saints." Chapter 170, Chimera. Oh, what is this test for? Ryan thought that he was not here to investigate the saints. 35XS is to figure out why the shop owner suddenly attacked him and said that this is a test, and what is this test for? Because when the principal of Fernando was helping the owner, Ryan picked up the wooden thorn and easily recognized through his knowledge of herbal medicine that it was a common sleeping pill rather than an imaginary poison, so he thinks the owner's words may be true. The shopkeeper is my godfather, Principal Fernando said. I wanted him to pretend to cheat you into the backyard under another pretext and look at your level. As a result, you accidentally saw the Saint logo and finally got it because of misunderstanding. Now this is the point. In fact, the reason for this test is because there is a certain degree of danger in the things that want to come to you next. If you are not good enough, we will not let you participate. Both of you are powerful wizards. What can make you both unsure and need my students' help? Ryan asked curiously. After listening to Ryan's question, the shopkeeper coughed twice and said, I just introduced you to the history of saints. I just want to tell you that most of us saints are fighting for a great dream. Although in the process of realizing this dream, it was wrong at the beginning of the middle school, but not all the saints were for this purpose. Especially in the middle and late of the war, we recruited people who didn't know the details because of the lack of manpower. Some of them are by the name of the saint. The head and chaotic situation reached their evil goal, and this time the Chimera society we are dealing with is like this. Chimera, what is that? Ryan asked curiously, because he had never heard of it before. This is a very old society, which can be traced back to the time of ancient Greece. Principal Fernando said on the side. They have always dreamed of creating powerful magical creatures through magic, so they wantonly use various evil methods to transform magical creatures. The legendary Chimera was made by them. This is also the origin of the name of their society. During the war in Grindelwald, many members of the Chimera society used false identities to mix into the saints. Later, in the name of the saints, they did a lot of bad things, such as several important mole massacres. Know that Grindelwald believes that the wizard should lead the management of moles, but opposes the wanton killing of moles. So my godfather and his father found a group of Chimera wizards hidden in South America. At that time, the former saints cleared those who corrupted the reputation of the saints. 35XS. But I didn't do it, the shopkeeper said in a regretful tone. They merged with the local blood sacrifice black wizards, and even under the cover of the local indigenous people, even the local wizards could hardly catch each other's tail, let alone those of us outsiders. It was only recently that things changed. It may be because they have been lurking for a long time and feel that they have developed well. We learned that they plan to take advantage of the opportunity of the British exchange students to come and communicate to launch an attack in order to have enough influence throughout the magic world. Why do they do this? Shouldn't this evil organization hide themselves? What happened to this jump to the stage? Ryan asked puzzled. Well, let me explain to you this way. Principal Fernando said, like the Death Eaters of your heyday in Europe, evil organizations have to show their strength when they develop to a certain extent, in order to get rid of the shackles further development. After all, the development of an organization is not enough to tap potential internally. It also needs to absorb fresh blood from the outside. If people outside do not know how you can join you, then the Brazilian Ministry of Magic doesn't matter. As far as I know, we have come here to communicate with both Ministry of Magic. We have warned the Ministry of Magic, but because I have no real evidence, the Ministry of Bureaucrats think we are just nervous. Now the only support we can get from the Ministry of Magic is that they promise that a team will be in school patrol irregularly nearby. Well, no matter where the Ministry of Magic is, it seems that I have to find a way to save myself now. So what do you need me to do? Ryan asked. We have a special course on Castro Brusu that is to enter the wild and observe the magical creatures in the wild state. You must also arrange this course as an official exchange student. Naturally, the place of this class will be outside the protection of the school. Even if the destination is also a prearranged place of the school, in theory, there is a certain amount of precautions, but it is definitely far less than the school's own defense. This is the only chance for those attackers. So we hope that you can help you observe the status of your students from the UK. If you find something wrong, you can immediately notify us. www.mtlnovel.com. After the principal took out a glassy green leaf and handed it to Ryan, Ryan got it only afterwards. Did I realize that this was a beautiful brooch? Brooch, what's the use? Ryan asked curiously, because in his perception it was just a simple leaf, without any magic runes drawn on it. It was not like a magic prop at all. This comes from a campanula tree planted in the principal's office. Its leaves are paired in pairs on the branch. There is a mysterious connection between the paired leaves. As long as one leaf is activated, another leaf can be connected to this leaf. Leaf resonance. That is to say, after you activate that brooch with magic power, all the sounds around you can be reproduced by another leaf. This tree is only known to the principals and very few people. You can use this thing to use on the other side. Some means of contacting us when you are isolated from external communications. I know. Ryan took the brooch and attached it to his chest. Thank you for your trust in me. After all, You told me that I am the person involved. Since this is the case, I am prepared in advance and it is better to face it. Emergencies. In spite of this, we still have to thank you, the owner said at this time. After all, the other party is also good at magical creatures. You take this brooch and you take a risk. So I assure you that after this operation, regardless of the result, I will give you something I learned when I was a saint. After discussing some details, things were almost all arranged. At this time, the shop owner said, "Oh, yes, your companion is still waiting for you in the front. I think you should go to the front now. If there is anything important in the future, I will ask your principal to inform you." Chapter 171, Conspiracy and Encounter. After the exchange, the owner and Ryan returned to the store together. What happened just now made Ryan dare not stay here longer, so he and Hermione left the shop after checking out the bill together. When they walked out of the shop, two people were transferred from the backyard. One was the principal of Fernando, and the other was a middle-aged wizard who was unseemly. If Ryan was still here, he would recognize that the middle-aged wizard had just directed them to this store when he just asked for directions. "Frank, is that little guy reliable?" the middle-aged wizard asked the shopkeeper. "He was better than we thought. I just heard that one of the group of British students was able to enter the Emerald Dream, and I thought that maybe he could try it with his strength. But just now in the conflict caused by the misunderstanding, I found out his strength far exceeds my imagination," Frank shopkeeper said. "But I don't think it's a little unsafe. The kid I got in the data is from a Pumal family. But just now, no matter how many powerful spells released without a stick or the magic weapon in my hand, there is a deep sense of strangeness. Those things are not what a hemp wizard should have." "What if he is a spy from Chimera?" the middle-aged wizard said with some doubt. "Oh, Hans. You are Captain. When the time is too long, sometimes it is too suspicious. Know that people who can enter the Emerald Dream will never be with the guys of the Chimera Society who use evil methods to transform natural life. Mixed. At least with my years of experience watching people, that little guy will not be a bad guy." 35XS. Principal Fernando refuted the viewpoint of the middle-aged man just now. "I think so too, Hans." The owner of Frank also interjected. "He just did not run away but followed me when he mistakenly thought that I was going to kill him." On the one hand, he showed that he had a certain degree of his own strength. Self-confidence. Lane no, it's just that the grocery store recently launched an escape system, so it's safe to run away. On the other hand, because he has a companion here, he wants to protect his companion. So from this perspective, he is a good man. We don't have to doubt him like this. "Well, you may be right. I should be suspicious." This middle-aged man who should be a said. "I really hope that this time the guys of Chimera Club will be wiped out. After all, the things that the defected saints took over in their hands have been too long in their hands, even if Grindelwald put enough seals on it. I am also worried that after such a long period of time they have found a way to break the seal. If that seems to be the case, the little guy has a stronger strength just now, which is also a good thing. I hope he can hold the opponent for a while, so that we can catch Chimera's tail." "Yes, I think so too," Principal Fernando said. "That thing is too dangerous to be in the hands of a group of lunatics and terrorists anyway. If most of our Chimera community knows, I would not go out and find a British little guy who is not at all familiar." Come to do the internal response. "Seriously, this is contrary to my philosophy as a principal. After all, we still involve a person who was not originally related." "Yeah, I hope everything went well this time. But you don't have to take advantage of that little guy's guilt. In the end, I will definitely pay him enough. Besides, we are doing a good thing rather than an evil thing. At this time kind lies are also acceptable," Frank shopkeeper finally concluded. "Of course, the conversation between these people in the store is completely unknown, otherwise he will never take this task with his habit of heart. After all, this task may actually involve the important legacy of Saints and Grindelwald. It doesn't look like it can be done easily." Not knowing that there was a trouble coming soon, Ryan and Hermione were back on the street, after purchasing a large package of potions and mailing them to the Weasley twins through the Owl post office. Ryan and the three of them found a local restaurant for lunch. That's right. 3 people. Because Ryan met Janku who was writing to Cedric at the Owl post office. After all, Halloween is coming, and everyone is preparing for the holiday. After chatting in the hall for a while, they decided to have lunch together. Because it is a local restaurant, everyone naturally eats food with Aboriginal style. Ryan ordered a grilled arowana for his lunch. "Why are you eating this freshwater fish full of thorns?" Hermione asked curiously as she ate her barbecue rice. "Be aware that this fish is used as an ornamental fish in the East, and it may cost tens of thousands of pounds in good quality. I chose this fish to feel the luxury of enjoying it." Ryan used a knife and fork to break down a fish said. During this lunch, they also became familiar with Janku as a top student of Ravenclaw. Obviously, she and Hermione have a lot of common language, and Ryan also knew a lot of things that were not clear before. For example, Janku's appearance is the best among the girls Ryan knows, not the ordinary version of the movie, which is more in line with Aunt Rowling's original description. Another point is that Janku is a half-breed wizard. Her mother works in the Ministry of Magic, her father is a Mull, and she runs a restaurant in Chinatown in London. After she showed her magical ability when she was a child, she began to slowly touch the magical world. For example, at the dinner table, he told Ryan and Hermione that she had supported the Tater Hill Tornado team since she was 6 years old and decided to become a player. Ryan was a little surprised that Janka was a half-breed wizard. After all, she had been exposed to the magic world since she was a child. So before, Ryan always thought she was pure blood. www.mtlnovel.com. But think about it too. After all, the British magic world is just like this. There are just one man and one woman. The possibility of being of Chinese age is too small, so as a witch, Janku's mother is also normal to find a male of the same ethnicity. But what made Ryan somewhat frustrated was that it might be because his parents belonged to the early immigrants. Although Janka can speak Chinese, he only speaks Cantonese in Chinese and does not speak Mandarin. This made Ryan and Janka only use English when communicating. Hermione was a little surprised at this kind of situation, where the mother tongue is clearly not communicative, is not incomprehensible when you think that the number of people in the heavens exceeds the population of the whole of Europe. The most surprising thing is that Janka actually knew Ryan's grandfather. No wonder, after all, Ryan's grandfather first ran a restaurant in London's Chinatown. Chinatown is so big, it's no surprise that there are restaurants all over the street. However, in Janku's narrative, Ryan found an interesting thing, that is, when Janka was 5 or 6 years old, Ryan's grandfather once saw her at the dinner table when she visited her house and magically suspended a cup. It was just that Ryan's grandfather still had a calm face and had tea with Janku's grandfather. So until today, Janka could not be sure whether Ryan's grandfather saw the cup hanging in the air. It seems that there may be some stories about this grandfather who returned to the old age. Lane thought so. After lunch, Janka and they said goodbye to go to other places, while Ryan and Hermione were going to go to the bookstores that were just full of people when no one came out at noon. Chapter 172. Quiet Halloween? Bookstores in the magic world often have magic arrays that control temperature and humidity, and the bookstores here are no exception. After enjoying the afternoon breeze in the Ryan and Hermione bookstore, the time soon reached 3:30 in the afternoon. Fortunately, each of Ryan and Hermione spent several gallons to buy several books, so that the clerk did not glare at them as they rubbed the air in the house. Ryan went to the post office with big and small bags, and packed all the gifts he had chosen for his friends in the morning. On the way to the pier, Lane curiously asked Hermione, "Most of the books you buy are in Spanish, and one is in Portuguese. Are you sure you can really understand it?" "That's it." Hermione smiled slightly. "Anyway, our two books are read alternately. I just ask you something I don't understand." During the jokes, the two reached the dock, where Professor Sprout was already waiting. Seeing her smile, she should have found a lot of good things in this town. Everyone was here by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So after the count was over, everyone boarded the boat back to school. Under the influence of the magic on the ship came up against the current at a very high speed, and from time to time, the hull slightly separated from the water surface because of the waves. If anyone is watching by the river, they will find that the canoe jumps along the river like a salmon traveling back every year. It's just that this way of travel is not very friendly to the passengers on the boat. When returning to the school dock, many people walked off the boat with pale faces and soft legs. There was even a 4th-year boy in Hufflepuff. As soon as he got out of the boat, he spit it out holding the pillar. Fortunately, Ryan pulled him from behind, before he was allowed to lie on the ground. As the dugouts approached the dock one after another, the students who returned from shopping also brought anger back to the campus. They laughed and showed off the results of this trip, and exchanged their feelings with friends today. Ryan and they are no exception, only that unlike boys who use cleanup to solve personal hygiene problems, girls go back to the dorms to take a shower. So only a few boys were chatting in the common room of the carriage. From these classmates, Ryan unexpectedly learned that their fieldwork classes will be arranged collectively a week before Christmas. It seems that there is still enough time to make some preparations. After all, what the shop owner arranged today is a bit strange, which makes people feel very bottomless. In this case, it is always right to prepare more. So at bedtime that night, Ryan went to Jushu again. After talking with Jushu, he realized that the overall situation in the world has stopped deteriorating and started to develop slowly, especially with the sufficient supply of sunlight crystals. The practitioners finally regained the upper hand in the battle of the demon, and the sufficient resources of the practice, so that the various schools can finally open the mountain gate to recruit new disciples. The status also rises. Before Ryan left last time, Nine Uncle asked Ryan if he could show them what the spells of Western marriage were. So this time Ryan came here with a translated Hogwarts and Castrob, all the textbooks of the two schools in Russia, plus a large copy of the interpretation and use of ancient Nordic Nuni. Because these things require a lot of energy to translate, so Ryan did not produce the finished product until now. While handing over these books to Uncle Ju, Ryan asked curiously why he wanted to understand that this kind of Taoism is not a system of extraordinary power at all. Uncle Ju solemnly replied that the stone of other mountains can attack Jade. He will let the communication crane bring these books back to Moshan to see what kind of knowledge he can learn from it. Sure enough, Keep a humble heart at all times, and live to learn and grow old is the mentality that a true practitioner should have. I thought that Ryan's sense of pride that grew in his heart after getting Reefer also disappeared. In the next 2 or 3 days, Ryan stayed at Yizhuang to ask Josh about his practice until he resolved all the problems he encountered recently. Ryan didn't bid farewell to Joshua and returned to Wonji grocery store. As soon as he returned to the Wonji grocery store, Ryan received a message from the two worlds of Plants vs. Zombie World and Radiant World. In the message, Ryan was informed that they had prepared the exchange items they had discussed last time. So Ryan took advantage of his chance at the grocery store in Wonji to help the two worlds complete the transaction, to hand over the newly cultivated calendula that can orientally absorb metal to the radiation world, accelerate the recycling of the ruins of the radiation world, and at the same time a batch of machinery and electronic products that radiate the world are handed over to the science and technology tree for a while, and they cannot be produced in large quantities for the time being, but because of the increase in population, plants that are in urgent need of these things fight against the zombie world. After another busy day, Ryan finally got all the chores back on the bed in his dormitory. This busyness made Ryan feel a little exhausted, but not without gains. He felt that he had more merits. At this time, Ryan really a little envious of other people's system. After doing something, all the strength resources are available. It's not like he has been exhausted for a long time to get benefits, and he feels that his system is the same as the fake one. After muttering for a while, Ryan was surprised to find that some of the thresholds of practice that could be solved in 3 or 4 months before being discovered in bed. Under the guidance of Jushu, it is estimated that this week will be completely resolved. www.mtlnovel.com representing your own strength will have a small improvement this week. It seems that sometimes it's not enough to just bury yourself in the courage and diligence, but also be good at using all the available power. There is a teacher like Jushu who is here, but when it is difficult to practice, he does not ask without asking. Some wasted. After summarizing the gains and lessons learned this time, the tired Ryan fell asleep quickly. When Ryan woke up the next morning, he found a pile of gifts under his feet. Ryan thought that this was the end of his second month in South America, and Halloween should be tomorrow. These gifts are probably mailed by British friends in advance. After all, the transatlantic owl letter is sometimes not on time, because the temperature of Castro Brusho in the depths of the Amazon rainforest is always above 25 C per year, and the surrounding plants are evergreen all year round. Unlike Hogwarts, the sky has been snowy. In addition, the heavy burden of classwork in exchange and learning led Ryan to feel that he lacked the atmosphere of Halloween this year. Until he saw this pile of gifts this morning, he really felt that Halloween was coming soon. This year's Halloween gifts are not much different from previous years. The only thing worth noting is that the Weasley twins sent a lot of sweets and snacks. The large flower letters on the top indicate that this is a trial product. It seems that after getting the data from Ryan's last time, the twin research has taken a big step forward. Thinking that Ryan sent this pile of things to the world of radiation, there are enough manpower and equipment at the college to analyze the results of eating these things. After all this was done, Ryan, who had finished washing, went to the auditorium for breakfast with everyone. Chapter 173, New Letter. The auditorium is full of festive atmosphere. In addition to the common pumpkin lanterns and bat decorations, there are some decorations with local characteristics, such as some ghost models. Special snacks such as sugar skulls, blood-filled sugar and tombstone biscuits also appeared on the dining table. Isn't it tomorrow for Halloween? Why is it like having a holiday today? Ryan asked strangely. Several students around him also showed puzzled expressions. Next to her, Hermione replied, "It's different from our British habits. South America's Halloween is from October 31st to November 2nd for a total of 3 days. It seems that the wizards in South America have a longer vacation like moles, but this is also a good thing for Ryan. After all, everyone likes vacations. At least from a dietary point of view, Castro Brusho's festival diet is more abundant than the daily diet. It's just that Ryan's good mood didn't last long, and he received several letters in the early morning of the next Halloween. There are Weasley twins, Percy, and even letters from Colin and Ron, who usually do not have much contact. These letters all told Ryan that a terrible thing happened in the school. Sirius Black did not know how he broke into the school, and even destroyed the portrait of Gryffindor Fat Lady with a knife. When Ryan took these letters and came to the common room, he found that most of them were waiting here, each holding a letter or two in his hand. 35XS is just that the news from other people is not as true as Ryan got. For example, a student next to Hufflepuff vowed that Blake broke into the Gryffindor public lounge and fought hundreds of students. Only one round was forced to escape. Just as everyone stood in the room and anxiously exchanged the news they got, Professor Sprout walked into the room and roughly counted the number and said to everyone, "Okay, you are all here now. There are some things I want to say something." Many people may have received letters from friends at school about what happened at Hogwarts last night. In order to avoid the spread of rumors, I will now give you a regular notice. First, Sirius Black did enter Hogwarts Castle last night and destroyed the portrait of the fat lady without access to the Gryffindor lounge. Second, there were no casualties in the process. Hope don't spread rumors. Finally, unfortunately, we did not catch Sirius, so I hope you can persuade your friends to cooperate with the school as much as possible at this time, and don't mess with things. Professor Sprout also read a glance at Ryan. It seems that the Weasley twins were notorious at school, and Ryan could only know by knowing an awkward and polite smile. After Professor Sprout finished speaking, everyone disbanded. On the way to class, Lane had been wondering what the defense of Hogwarts Castle was all about. Many of his peers in his last life said that the principal can monitor the movement of the entire school. Of course, this is not difficult from a technical point of view. After all, Harry Potter's father can do this. There is a set in Hogwarts School. The same monitoring system is not difficult, but if it is possible to do real-time monitoring like some of the colleagues said, why didn't Dumbledore catch Black directly? Of course, Ryan did not endorse the Dumbledore conspiracy theory that many people said. After all, as a leader of the White Wizard, Dumbledore should not be able to indulge the criminals. Of course, under this premise, Dumbledore couldn't do anything more than knowing that his men had been wronged, and had to squat in Azkaban for more than 10 years. It seems that the most likely explanation is that the Hogwarts monitoring system can only show who is where, but all this requires people to keep watching, and there is no automatic alarm function. And as a principal, Dumbledore, how could he stare at the monitor like a security guard all day? In this case, Ryan felt that he would have greater confidence in the future in Hogwarts Castle, as long as he was not too lucky and avoided the portraits and ghosts. Naturally, in this case, everyone can't help but discuss how Black broke through the Dementors' blockade and entered the school, but most people think that they should enter the school through certain secret passages. Because everyone is in Brazil now, Hogwarts is a bit far away from them. So after a long discussion, everyone left this matter behind. It's just that when we wrote to friends at Hogwarts that night, we couldn't help but give them a few more words of comfort. But Hogwarts' situation did not come as a result of this incident. When everyone soon forgets the previous incident, Hogwarts has a new happily happened. That day happened to be in mid-November. Ryan came back after dinner and found that everyone was discussing Hogwarts' upcoming college competition in the common room. Especially Ravenclaw students are very nervous about this year's competition. After all, because Janko participated in this exchange event, Ravenclaw can only find substitute players to play the game. Although Ryan did not have a bad cold for Quidditch, you read www.uukanzu.com, but for social purposes he still joined the discussion circle, occasionally saying a few words or two pretending he was not a rookie. As everyone discussed the heat, Hermione suddenly pushed the door into the common room, holding an open letter in her hand. Ryan, Hogwarts had an accident. The Dementor broke into the Quidditch stadium out of control and Harry fell directly from the sky. As soon as Hermione's voice fell, there was an immediate bang in the common room. Everyone started talking to Hermione about what happened. As Hermione read the letters aloud, the specific course of events was gradually constructed by everyone. In summary, the excitement and happiness of everyone on the Quidditch stadium made the hungry Dementors out of control. Harry was comatose because they were too close to them. Fortunately, Dumbledore shot away the Dementors to save Get Off Harry. I really don't know why the Dementors should be used to protect the school. This kind of filthy things should have been completely eliminated. What the Ministry of Magic is thinking. What is the difference between Hogwarts and Azkaban? While all the people in the common room were discussing the matter passionately, Ryan and Hermione returned to their cars. This letter was written by Ginny near Harry's bed. She said that when she was taken to the hospital, Harry was in a bad state, pale, and the whole person was shaking. So she wanted to ask Harry this question now. How to fix it? Hermione asked as he handed the letter to Ryan. As far as I know, there is only one solution Harry can use now. Ryan said. Chapter 174, Flesh Guardian. There is a way. I know, it's a guardian curse, right? Hermione said in response. But how can we tell him how to practice the patron saint curse at Castro Brushuo? After listening to Hermione's words, Ryan looked at her helplessly and said, he can also go to others to learn. There are so many professors at Hogwarts that no one can guard the deity curse. Yes, even if the professor doesn't teach, Harry and Weasley's relationship is so good, there must be a way to learn the guardian curse. Well, I will write to remind Ginny now. Hermione said here hurriedly ran back to write to Ginny. I really don't know when Hermione's relationship with Ginny is so good, but sometimes the friendship of the girls is so strange. Thinking of here, Ryan shook his head helplessly back to the dormitory. After all, he recently had an idea about the synthesis of life magic and natural magic that needs enough time to study. It's time to practice again on Saturday, as usual starts with a magical fight. But according to the agreement in advance, the two fighting in the opening can only use the disarming spell and the iron armor spell to avoid destroying the surrounding environment. At the beginning, Hermione waved her wand directly at Ryan and emitted a red light. After so long practice, she had mastered the silent casting tricks of the two most familiar spells. Ryan sideways avoided and began his own instruction. You need to be more accurate. The enemy will not stay there like a tree. 35xs. When calculating the opponent's movement, remember that few people on the battlefield will move at a constant speed. Observe the opponent carefully to determine the opponent's next move correctly. Strength is not strong enough. You just couldn't beat my magic wand even if I didn't block it with an iron curse. Very well, your rollover pose just avoided the spell. Remember, under our current magic level is not high. The first reaction to seeing the spell should be hiding rather than blocking. The posture is ugly. It doesn't matter, no demeanor, as long as these things can help you save your life. The dead can never talk about demeanor. Don't stare at me. Sometimes people don't have to wait for the end of the battle even if the wand is released. You just didn't notice that the two of us are too close. The distance was dangerous for a wizard. If it is confirmed, it is estimated that you will lie down one morning. You know that many werewolves are eager to fight with the wizard. They are much more ruthless than me, and the damage caused is irreversible. 10 minutes later, Ryan's cry finally stopped, and by this time Hermione was panting, sweat dripping down her messy brown hair. It can be seen that even magical battles are a heavy physical task for wizards, especially when you need to use your brain in battle. After a short break, Ryan started teaching the patron saint as planned. After Christmas, after all, they would return to Hogwarts. It has become a very important thing to learn to protect yourself in the patron saint when the Dementors are out of control. Although the Ministry of Magic repeatedly guarantees that it was only an accident last time, what will happen if the accident happens to yourself next time? As soon as she started teaching, Hermione asked the question she thought when she practiced in private after she learned the principles of the patron saint last time. Are there only patron saints in the world to deal with Dementors? No, I can be sure of at least two. Lane replied confidently. 2 kinds? Hermione didn't believe it. Are there other spells besides the patron saint? There must be. The most important element of the guardian spell is happiness and love. The mysterious person does not have this thing. But in the last war, the mysterious person can drive a Dementor. Devilish monsters like this will not bargain. Then it can only show that he must have a spell that is more evil than Dementors, which can make him obliterate Dementors. But compared with this thing, the guardian deity curse should be the best to learn. Of course, Ryan hides a lot of things here. At least he thinks that there are many spells in Leafa that just restrain the Dementors, and maybe they can also destroy the Dementors. Not to mention that when he confronted the Dementor in the combat professor, he found that he was not affected by the Dementor like the other 2 students. This means that he can normally play himself when he is actually facing the Dementor ability. Ryan was a bit strange at first, but soon thought that this might have a lot to do with his mastery of Taoism. After all, those Taoisms emphasized the role of the heart from the beginning. It is also understandable that Ryan, who is responsible for Taoism, can remain calm in front of Dementors. After the explanation, the two began to practice the patron saint spell. After they read the spell, silver mist appeared on the wand head. The only difference is that Ryan's mist becomes thicker and covers a larger area. This kind of smoke is estimated to only deal with 1 or 2 Dementors. If there is more, it won't work. Ryan tried to shape the smoke while watching the smoke on the head of Hermione's rod pointed to. In theory, the physical patron saint represents a person's heart. Many people will not change the flesh patron in their lives. At the same time, the magic creature's flesh patron is stronger than ordinary creatures. For example, Dumbledore's patron saint is a phoenix. Oh, that's what it is. www.mtlnovel.com. I really hope to see my guardian deity. Maybe it can still be a beast. After hearing Hermione's words, Ryan was a little murmured. After all, the protagonists in the fellows he watched in his last life were basically gods and beasts. It would be a little embarrassing if he got something else. But some things will not change because of human will. After practicing for more than half an hour, Ryan vaguely felt that she had broken through a barrier. He immediately turned his mind to fill his heart with pure joy, and then waved his wand to read, protection. As the spell was pronounced, an articulation emerged from the head of Lane's wand. Damn, isn't it because you killed too many spiders and finally the guardian deity turned into a spider? Ryan felt the cold sweat on his head came down, especially when I watched one after another of the arthropods emerge. The unclear feeling became heavier and heavier. Finally a pair of pliers popped out, which made Ryan take a sigh of relief. Not just a spider. But when the whole thing came out, Ryan felt that he might have offended which way the gods did everything, because what appeared before him was a hairy crab the size of a dinner plate. You can even tell from the stomach that this is a male hairy crab. Soon after the patron saint came out, he circulated around Ryan in a glorious way, waving the pliers from time to time. No wonder the legs came out first. Not all crabs walk sideways, naturally legs are ahead. This is Hermione who came together and said curiously, "Hey, your patron saint is a crab. But I have never seen this kind of crab." "What kind of crab is it?" Chapter 175, Shadow in the Dark. After listening to Hermione's question, Lane discovered that there are no hairy crabs in the UK. 35xs. So he decided to give Hermione, you, a good look. This is a freshwater crab from the Eastern Celestial Dynasty. They are a very valuable ingredient in their hometown. In the past, when the rich people of the Celestial Dynasty ate them, they also used gold and silver to create special tableware. Oh, That is to say, this is just a common crab used for food, right? Hermione said straightforwardly. Ryan felt that a feeling of congestion came out of the body and quickly said, but the average freshwater crab is only the size of a human palm. Now it is so large that it has evolved into a monster called a crab. Legend has it that this monster can destroying the world can also create the world. It seemed that Ryan's rhetoric calmed Hermione, and she quickly ran aside to continue practicing her patron saint. Ryan was a little bored at this time, so he sat on the floor and began to think about what the enemy in the Mahogany Town said before, what the enemy was going to do, but unfortunately now he had too little information to infer anything. As Ryan and Hermione practiced the patron saint spell, a black figure quickly shuttled through the forest in a forest more than 100 kilometers away. After coming under a huge banyan tree, the black shadow knocked on a scar on the banyan tree at a specific rhythm. Soon a black hole portal appeared on another small banyan tree, and he immediately walked away. Entering, the portal was closed, and the original tree trunk was restored. 35XS. After walking for 2 minutes along a dark and bumpy tunnel, the shadow came to an underground building, and a wizard in a brown robe saw him and asked, "Pedro, do you patrol this way along the way? Do you have found something wrong?" It turned out that the shadow was a wizard named Pedro, but now he is wearing a black robe, and most of his face is wearing a mask made of bark. Only his eyes and mouth are exposed. He glanced at the brown robe wizard sitting behind the counter, and then replied, "Old hose, you should study your potion in peace. The things outside are out of your control. If you really want to know you can ask the boss directly." After hearing this sentence, Jose was very dissatisfied and said, "Pedro, you need to respect your predecessors a little bit, otherwise I don't know when the medicines you need will be in your hands." Obviously this threat is effective. Pedro quickly turned around and said, "Of course, this is not a secret. I can also talk about it if you are a veteran. If I go out this time, I haven't found anything wrong around me, but it just caught my attention. There will now be a team of Horas patrolling that spot occasionally." 35XS. Hurrah! It seems that these guys have a pretty nose. But this is also within the scope of the plan, and nothing is different from what the boss planned. Boss plan? Why don't I know? Can you tell me something? Pedro asked carefully. After all, he feels that the wind has become more and more tense recently. Letting him go on patrol every day but not telling him why, this gives him a strong sense of crisis, so he wants to ask what happened. After all, it's not my turn to do anything outside. Jose glanced at Pedro. Besides, the things inside are not what you newcomers should know. I can only say that after this hurdle, we may be able to live in the sun with fairness and integrity. Okay, a fair life. Pedro muttered and walked to his residence. He is indeed a dark wizard now, but he never admits to this title that he feels that he has done nothing wrong, obviously only used some magic for survival, and by any means he is a dark wizard. Naturally in this organization, most of the bottom clerks are people like him. A year ago, Pedro was a student who had just graduated from Castro Bruce. It's just that the mole background is relatively mediocre in school, and soon encountered the embarrassment of being unemployed just after graduation. But the problem is that he can't go back to the mole world. On the one hand, he only has a primary school diploma in the mole world, and there is no way to accept him in the home of 7 children. On the other hand, after seeing the magic of the magic world, he can no longer integrate into the mole world. Just like Peter, even if he has lived like a mouse for more than 10 years, he is not willing to live away from the wizarding world and the moles who are regarded as inferior animals. In this case, Pedro can only watch the wizards who are not as good as his pure-blood family in school with the envy and jealousy in the magic world, and he can only do everything in his power. Survive here. Finally, half a year later, he opened the door of a villa in the mole world with a few black magic that he had learned during this time, and then completely released the family of 3 in the villa because of the unsatisfactory time. Gas. When he reacted, he found himself standing among the 3 bodies, still holding a handful of gold and silver jewelry. At this time, there was only one idea in his mind that I was wrong. www.mplnovel.com could not be punished by those shrewd wizarding laws. After such enlightenment, Pedro escaped frantically from the villa. Fortunately, this is the world of moles. The wizards are not paying enough attention. The first to come is the incident reversal team, so he can successfully knock down the opponent and ran out. If this is in the wizarding world, Shura will arrive in the first time, then he can't run away even if he wants to run. But since then he has also been on the wanted list. Fortunately, due to the wizard's disregard for moles, the amount of bounty on him is not large, and few bounty hunters will shoot for him. But this also means that he is no longer a normal wizard. The work, socializing, and even foothold in the wizarding world are no longer open to him. Not to mention that there are always Horas who follow him from time to time to kill him. But in the end, he was saved by the leader of the organization. Since then, he has lived here secretly, although not free to travel. But after completing his daily tasks, he can look at the latest star times or study the magic book here. You can even go to Mahogany Town together occasionally after drinking the compound soup. Only at this time, Pedro looked at the little wizards in Mahogany Town with hatred. So after learning that the target of the operation was related to his alma mater, he volunteered to undertake the patrol task. However, The leader could actually tolerate the finger-pointing of the group of foreign Europeans. The only thing now is to hope that this action will really allow everyone to live in the sun again, as they said. Thinking of Pedro changing clothes and lying on the bed, he soon fell asleep.